Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're not just watching history, you're inside it. And heads up, you probably won't survive this. No offence, but Tudor Britain isn't exactly weekend in the countryside material. The roads are mud, the air smells like death and cabbage, and unless you're into diseases with nicknames like sweating sickness, this is not your happy place. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it there? I want to imagine you wrapped up in a blanket at 11:37 PM in a creaky old house in Portland, or maybe stuck in traffic in Sao Paulo with headphones in, wondering how long you'd last with no antibiotics and a full day of manure hauling ahead. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to a grey dawn, the air sharp with salt and soot. Your first thought, you're cold. Your second thought, your feet are wet. As the blur clears, you realise you're sitting, no, slumped, against a pile of wooden crates that stink like rotting fish. And surrounding you, chaos. You're at the River Thames docks circa 1536. Everything is noise, shouts of boatmen, squeals from hogs being hauled ashore. Somewhere nearby, someone is retching, and it might actually be you. Your clothes are wrong. You've got on what feels like a potato sack and nothing underneath. Your feet are bare, and a fresh layer of something disgusting clings to your ankles. You try to stand and immediately regret it. The ground is not only slimy, it's alive. Worms, muck. Something that might be an eel wriggles past your toes, and your gag reflex is having a moment. You take a few woozy steps and get your first good look at London. Well, good is generous. The skyline is all church spires and heavy timbered buildings leaning like old men into each other for support. Smoke hangs low in the sky, thick and yellow. You don't know how you got here, but that's not your biggest problem. Your biggest problem is that you have no money, no social status, no useful skills, at least not ones they care about here, and not a single idea what day it is. You hear a bell in the distance. That's St Mary le Bow, and if you were born within the sound of its tolls, they'd call you a proper cockney. You, though? You're just a confused, barefoot, probably doomed time traveller trying not to step in human waste. A group of dock workers stares at you, whispering. One of them points. Great. You forgot to blend in. You do your best to walk away slowly, but slowly makes you look drunk, and now you're attracting even more attention. You duck into an alleyway between two crooked buildings and immediately wish you hadn't. Someone's turned this spot into their personal bathroom. The wall is wet, the air is thick, and flies buzz with territorial menace. You press on, teeth gritted. You try to remember your Tudor history, but let's be honest, you mostly skipped that part in school. Henry VIII is king right now, right? You're pretty sure he's the one with the wives and the beheadings and the leg ulcers? That's promising. You duck into what looks like a stable, hoping no one notices you. Inside, a boy of maybe 10 is hauling a bucket half his size filled with what smells like pee. He looks at you and blinks. You lost or just touched in the head? He asks, wiping his nose on his sleeve. You smile, trying to be non-threatening. Bit of both. He squints. Ain't from round here, are you? That's putting it lightly. You shake your head. No, very far away. Well, you best be careful, stranger, he says. Foreigners don't last long if they wander without purpose. And with that, he dumps the bucket outside with a slosh that splashes perilously close to your feet. Let's take a moment to talk about what you've stumbled into. It's not the Renaissance-y dream you may have been picturing. This part of Tudor London is cramped, loud, and smells like a festival of decay. About 80% of people live in crushing poverty. You're in Southwark, a district infamous for its brothels, bear-baiting pits, and public executions. It's also where they dump things no one wants to smell or see, including possibly you. Fun fact, in Tudor times, fishwives were among the loudest and most feared street figures. Imagine a lady in a blood-stained apron, holding a gutted eel in one hand and hurling Shakespearean-grade insults with the other. That's who you nearly walk into next. Except she's currently mid-fight with a toothless man over the price of spoiled haddock. You decide not to interrupt, and here's a little-known fringe fact for you. Eels were a staple in Tudor diets. There were so many in the Thames they practically slithered into dinner. People ate them fried, jellied, or just sort of boiled and hoped for the best. You will unfortunately experience this firsthand later. As you stagger through the narrow lanes, avoiding dung heaps and side-eyes, you begin to notice something unsettling. Everyone's looking at you like you're either drunk or dying, which might be fair, but also, it's your teeth. They're too white, your posture too upright, and you're not coughing. Yet. In Tudor England, those are signs you're either a noble in hiding or some kind of witch. Neither ends well. But there's one question historians still argue over that could make or break your survival. How much mobility did commoners really have? Could you pass as a servant, pick up odd jobs, blend in for a few days? Or was the system so rigid that even your accent, off by just enough, would doom you to the stocks? Some say the class system was fluid under the right conditions. Others argue you'd be sniffed out within minutes. Judging by the way the baker just slammed his shutter when you walked past, you're voting for sniffed out. Your stomach growls like an angry beast. But food isn't free and neither is safety. You duck behind a stack of barrels and try to collect your thoughts. Somewhere, a dog barks. Somewhere else, someone screams, "Welcome to Tudor London, traveller. You've made it 5 minutes. Only 1,435 to go if you want to make it through the day." You know that saying, follow your nose? Yeah, don't. Not here. Not in Tudor London. The air assaults you with an aggressive blend of boiled onions, wood smoke, human waste, and something sulphurous you can't quite place. You half expect a demon to crawl out of the street. It's not just the stench, it's the stickiness of it. The way the smell clings to your clothes and burrows into your nose hairs like it plans to set up camp. You shuffle forward, nostrils half clenched, and spot a group of people standing in a slow-moving line beside a public water pump. There's a woman scrubbing what looks like a blood-stained tunic, and several barefoot kids taking turns splashing grimy water over each other. You approach the pump thinking maybe you can wash off whatever mystery goop is now crusting between your toes, but a man immediately shouts, "Oi!" Paid for, that is. You back away, holding up your hands like some kind of time-travelling peace negotiator. No one cares. These people are tired, wet, and suspicious of anyone who doesn't look like they've been rolling in dirt for at least a week. And let's be honest, you still have that 21st century softness about you. You might as well be glowing. So you decide to explore. Mistake number 1, you take a wrong turn down a narrow side lane and, yep, that smell, that's you. You've stepped in something. Correction. Several somethings. Tudor Britain doesn't have plumbing the way you know it. Waste goes into chamber pots, and chamber pots get dumped, when people remember, straight out the windows and doors into the alleys. There's a reason every second person shouts "Gardy-loo" before tossing their bucket. That's not a friendly greeting. It's your last warning before human waste rains from the sky. You glance up, paranoid now. Every window above you looks like a potential trapdoor to doom. This alley is barely wider than your outstretched arms, and even though it's morning, the buildings lean so close overhead that everything's cast in a grey-green twilight. Every puddle is suspect. Every breeze carries a threat. You try to breathe through your mouth, but that's worse. Much worse. It tastes like boiled cabbage and sadness, and now your skin itches. Is that psychological? Possibly, but also, possibly not. Remember, there are no daily showers here. Soap exists, but it's expensive and often smells worse than the person using it. People clean themselves with rough linen cloths and a splash of cold water if they're lucky. If you ask someone where the bathhouse is, they might laugh. Or worse, assume you're a courtesan looking for work. It's not like people want to be filthy, it's just that clean water is hard to come by. And bathing? It's considered risky by many Tudor folks. That open scholarly debate you've stumbled into? Historians still argue whether frequent bathing was common among the working class or avoided due to fears it spread disease. Some evidence suggests that the sweat and oil on your skin were thought to form a natural barrier against illness. So ironically, washing too much could be seen as suspicious behaviour. You, with your obvious interest in hygiene, are already making enemies. You wander out of the alley and into a square filled with food vendors, hoping the breeze will clear your head. It doesn't. If anything, it carries the distinct smell of dead animal. A butcher is hacking a sheep carcass to pieces on a stump, his apron so soaked in blood it looks like performance art. Flies circle him like little black vultures. His cleaver thunks through bone with a rhythmic certainty. People queue patiently, holding out cloths to carry the meat home. No bags, no refrigeration, just hope and salt. You find a wooden bench and sit, trying not to make eye contact with the rats skittering underfoot. You can see one chewing on something that was definitely once alive. A woman nearby fans herself with a folded bit of parchment. Her teeth, what's left of them, are brown nubs, and her hair is slicked back with something that looks suspiciously like bacon grease. She's got an aura of "don't mess with me" that you respect from a distance. Your own hair is sticking to your forehead now. You feel greasy, grimy. Your skin prickles under the layers of someone else's old tunic. You catch your reflection in a puddle and recoil. Your face is already changing. The soot in the air, the smoke from peat fires, the sheer human gunk swirling around you, it's all starting to settle. You try again to get clean, splashing a bit of water from a nearby horse trough onto your face. A man shouts at you immediately. Apparently that water's meant for the animals. You nod and move away quickly, face dripping, dignity eroding. And now for a fun fact. Tudor London had no real waste disposal system. Open sewers called kennels ran down the middle of streets, sometimes covered with boards, sometimes not. When it rained, everything washed toward the Thames, which, incidentally, was also where people got their drinking water, and swam, and dumped bodies. So if you were wondering why your stomach feels queasy, well, congrats. You've probably ingested a little of everything. Suddenly the square erupts with noise. A town crier appears, ringing a bell and shouting something about new laws and curfews. People gather to listen. You try to blend in, keeping your mouth shut. But someone near you sniffs the air, then looks straight at you. "You smell too fresh," he mutters. "You a foreigner?" Your brain panics. You're not ready for Tudor-level xenophobia. You shrug, give a non-committal grunt and back away slowly. There's a very real chance that foreigner doesn't just mean not from London. It could mean witch, spy, or plague carrier. You're starting to realise that being clean, quiet and uninfected makes you more suspicious, not less. One last sensory gift before we move on. Imagine being surrounded by 50 people who haven't bathed in a month, all stuffed into a single room for a wedding feast. That's the Tudor vibe. It clings to you like mould, seeps into your lungs and makes your modern instincts scream for hand sanitizer, which of course does not exist. You make your way back toward the river, hoping the breeze off the Thames will help. It doesn't. The water is brown and sluggish, and dead fish float belly up near the shore. Somewhere upriver, a body bobs briefly before vanishing beneath the surface. You look away quickly. You've lasted a few hours. You've been publicly humiliated, lightly accused of witchcraft, and are now wearing at least 3 types of sewage, and it's not even noon. Let's talk about food. Or rather the Tudor version of it, which, if you're lucky, won't try to escape the plate. By now your stomach's growling like a Tudor bear baiting victim, and your hopes for a granola bar magically appearing in your pocket have officially died. You need breakfast, or something vaguely edible and fast. But breakfast in Tudor London isn't a warm croissant and a foamed oat milk latte. It's bread and beer. That's it. Not even jam. You spot a small crowd gathered around a stall near the fish market. The seller is a wiry woman with arms like butchered rope, holding up what appears to be a hunk of black bread the size of a brick. "Halfpenny a slice," she shouts, voice like gravel dragged across stone. You reach instinctively for your wallet. Right. Not on you. Of course not. You're a penniless time traveller with no ID, no Apple Pay, and probably lice. You try to charm the woman, offer a sheepish smile, maybe get some pity bread. She stares at you like you just asked to marry her goat. "No coin, no loaf. Go chew gravel," she snarls. Beside her, a grimy man is sloshing ale into chipped wooden cups. It's barely 9 a.m, and he already looks like he's sweating through his teeth. Tudor folk drink beer like water, because, well, the water is mostly poison. Beer is safer, low alcohol, and practically the only hydration available to commoners. Children drink it. Nuns drink it. Midwives probably baptize babies in it. You ask for a cup and he eyes you suspiciously. "You got farthings?" You don't. He shrugs and mutters something about beggars. Okay, you're desperate. You scrounge the ground. Hey, there's a bit of crust someone dropped in the mud. Maybe it's edible. You pick it up and examine it. Partially gnawed, possibly rat-licked, and 80% grit. You put it back down. Even hunger has limits. Here's the thing most modern folks don't appreciate. Eating in Tudor England isn't about choice, it's about chance. Bread is the cornerstone of every meal, but the quality varies wildly depending on your status. Nobles get manchet, a fine white loaf made with wheat flour and privilege. The poor get horse bread, made with rye, peas, beans, and whatever else could be ground into a greyish paste. It's like eating a doorstop, but less satisfying. You sit on the edge of a barrel and try not to cry. Next to you, 2 boys no older than 8 are gnawing on onions like apples. One offers you a bite. You hesitate, but your stomach decides for you. It burns your mouth and makes your eyes water, but hey, it's food. You nod your thanks, wiping your tears. One of the boys points to your shoes or lack thereof and laughs. You from the country? He asks. Further than that, you mutter. Across the square a bell rings, and a group of men with carts rolls in carrying what appears to be, joy of joys, a steaming pot of something. The crowd rushes over. You follow, hopeful. Maybe it's stew, maybe porridge, maybe something that won't haunt your digestive system for the rest of your life. The pot is set down and opened with a hiss of greasy steam. A heavy ladle dips in and emerges with a sludge the colour of regret. Pottage. The Tudor answer to, what can we make from literally anything? Barley, leeks, stale bread, bones, turnip skins, maybe a single pea if it's payday. You try to blend in with the line, inching forward, hoping the ladler doesn't ask questions. And he doesn't. He just looks at your empty hands and says, no bowl? Right. Tudor rule number 143, bring your own bowl, spoon and dignity. You've got none of the above. That's when it hits you. The hunger, sure, but more than that. The sheer tedium of being poor in the past. No cafes, no vending machines, no hope of a cheeky biscuit hidden in your bag. Just relentless monotony. Every day is about finding bread, not dying, avoiding suspicion, and maybe getting 5 minutes to sit somewhere that doesn't smell like hot entrails. Quirky fact of the day, Tudor eggs were considered dangerous by some, especially if eaten raw. One doctor claimed they could cause a rotting of the humours. You briefly consider what your modern breakfast, scrambled eggs with feta, would do to the average 1500s physician. Probably faint on the spot. You finally cave and beg for a bite from an old woman with a surprisingly generous pile of pottage. She eyes you, shrugs, and gestures for you to hold out your hands. You do. She slaps a scoop of hot goo into your palms like it's perfectly normal, and here it is. It's scalding. It burns, you yelp, she cackles, but you eat, like a wild animal, like a very sad raccoon. As you lick your fingers clean, a man with a feathered cap approaches and eyes you. You a labourer? He asks. You freeze. Maybe. He grunts. You look strong enough. Bricklayer's crew needs another hand. No coin unless you work. And there it is. Your first real option for food, shelter, and possible survival. You nod. He waves for you to follow. But this brings us to an open scholarly debate. Just how much social fluidity was possible for a no-name nobody in Tudor times. Some historians argue that if you worked hard, shut up, and avoided scandal, you could climb a rung or two. Others say the class lines were carved into the bones of the system. With no family, no parish, and no master's letter, you'd always be seen as a drifter, and drifters were dangerous. As you follow the man through the muddy streets, you feel eyes on you again. People whisper, children point. Maybe it's your stride, maybe it's your still too clean hair, or maybe it's just that you're clearly not from here, and in Tudor London nothing is more dangerous than being different. Your new boss doesn't ask for your name, just hands you a trowel and points at a wall. You get to work, shaky, sore, and hungry again already. Welcome to the working class. Breakfast is over, and so is any chance of rest. You've got bricks to move, and God help you if you stop. By midday, your arms are shaking. Your back screams every time you lift another brick, and you're sweating in places you didn't know could sweat. Your fingertips are raw from scraping against mortar, and the sun, not a gentle golden Instagram sun, but a smog-filtered Tudor sun that feels more like a heat lamp on a rat, is beating down with mean-spirited intensity. Your new co-workers, if you can call them that, don't talk much. They grunt. They spit. One of them hasn't blinked in 2 hours. You're not sure if it's intimidation or just chronic dehydration. You quickly learn that working in Tudor Britain isn't just physically brutal, it's also aggressively unsafe. No hard hats, no gloves, just your own 2 blistering hands and the sheer terror of being crushed by a falling timber. And they're not exactly OSHA compliant around here. Scaffolding is made from rickety wood planks and rope. The guy above you is balancing a full bucket of lime mortar on a shelf that creaks every time he shifts his weight. Don't stand under it, one of the men grunts, chewing something that might be tobacco, might be dirt. Last boy what did got it in the eye. Never saw again. Cool, thanks for the tip. You nod and take 2 clumsy steps to the left, only to have your foot sink ankle deep into a pit of mud and who knows what. You lose your balance, fall, and splash something suspiciously black all over your tunic. Everyone laughs, and not in a friendly way. Someone calls you goosebrain. You accept it. It's probably accurate. Still, for all the filth and bruises, the rhythm of labour has a strange hypnotic effect. Lift, stack, smear, repeat. You lose track of time. You stop thinking. Your brain dulls itself with the simplicity of survival. But then your stomach pipes up again, louder this time. You haven't eaten since that pottage on the palms moment, and it's not exactly holding strong. At last, someone calls a break. The workers disperse into small groups, pulling hunks of bread or bits of dried meat from inside their tunics. You don't ask questions. You're too tired. You just sit on a stone pile, legs twitching from overuse, and hope no one asks you to speak. That's when it happens. You're chewing a sliver of something that might be pork jerky. Don't ask how you got it, you don't remember, when a man nearby starts coughing. Not just a little tickle. This is deep, chest-rattling, phlegm-launching coughing. People instinctively lean away. Some mutter. You lean farther. He catches your eye and shrugs. The bad air, he says. Can't escape it. You nod politely, but your heart skips a beat. The bad air. Miasma. Tudor folks believed disease was spread by foul-smelling air, and in a way they weren't entirely wrong. Filth breeds germs, and London is practically marinated in filth. But what they didn't know, germs, bacteria, viruses, the real party crashers. You look around and realise almost everyone is coughing. Lightly. Constantly. It's the Tudor soundtrack. This isn't just pollution. It's sickness. Fun historical fact. In 1518, London experienced an outbreak of sweating sickness, a fast-moving plague that could kill a man in hours. Even the rich weren't safe. No one knew what caused it. Some thought it was divine punishment. Others blamed foreign fabric. You're just hoping it's not about to make a comeback, with you as patient zero. You try to shift your thoughts elsewhere, but someone behind you mutters something about plague wards. That gets your attention. You casually slide closer and overhear 2 men talking about how a local household was shut in just yesterday. Shuttered windows, marked with a red X. The entire family, sick or not, locked inside to either recover or die. You suddenly realise there's no real protection here. No warning, no contact tracing. You could shake hands with a guy at lunch and be dead by dinner. There's a reason people kept lavender on strings around their necks. It wasn't just for the smell. It was survival fashion. That's when a small cart rolls by, pulled by a man with a scarf over his mouth. A body lies in the back, loosely covered in cloth. Everyone glances. No one stops working. You can't tell if the body is man, woman, or child, and honestly, you don't want to know. This is your first real brush with Tudor death, and it won't be your last. Here's a slightly weirder fact you didn't ask for. In some parishes, people kept a death bell ready to be rung the moment someone died, to alert the neighbourhood and start the ritual process. Some churches even had a plague bell, rung when carting away infected corpses. Death wasn't private. It was loud, public, and often lingering just around the corner. You finish chewing your mystery meat and stand up again, joints aching. Breaks over, back to work. The rest of the afternoon is a blur of repetitive motion, bad posture, and muscle fatigue. The sun dips lower, casting long, angry shadows across the street. That's when you get careless. You're carrying a load of bricks up a ramp when your foot slips, again, and you fall hard, twisting your ankle. You yelp, not dramatically, just enough for the foreman to notice. He walks over and snorts. You done then? You nod, biting your lip. He shrugs, as if to say, not my problem, and turns away. No sympathy, no workers' comp, just the cold fact that you're now more useless than you were this morning, which is really saying something. You limp over to a nearby wall and sit down hard. The pain radiates up your leg like fire. You rub your ankle, unsure if it's sprained, broken, or just hates you now. Either way, you're officially out of commission and once again very much at risk. And here comes the debate of the day. How were injured workers treated in Tudor times? Some historians say communities supported their own through church alms and parish funds. Others argue injured poor were left to starve unless taken in by a master or guild. Either way, you're not from here. You have no parish, no master, and definitely no friends in high places. You sit back against the wall, ankle throbbing, stomach hollow again, and the faint scent of burning tallow candles floating in from a nearby window. A bell tolls somewhere in the distance. Vespers. The day's nearly done, and so are you, if you can't figure out your next move. You've survived hard labour, near infection and public humiliation. You smell like a compost heap and probably have trench foot, but somehow you're still breathing. The night is coming, and Tudor nights are even worse than Tudor days. You sit there for a while, not because it's smart, but because moving hurts, and you're tired in a way that isn't just physical. The kind of tired that seeps into your bones and whispers, "This is how you die." In the mud. In someone else's century, the street's quieter now, emptied of most workers, though the occasional cart still clatters by. Behind you, a candle glows faintly in a crooked window. The rest of the buildings huddle together like gossiping old ladies leaning in, hiding secrets. And boy, does this street have secrets. You try to stand. Bad idea. Your ankle sends a jolt of white-hot pain up your leg and you sit back down with an embarrassing little grunt. You hope no one heard. They definitely did. Two kids giggle from behind a rain barrel, whispering about the limping stranger. You wave at them. They vanish into the shadows. Fair enough. You're not exactly radiating safety right now. Still, you can't just stay here. Night's coming, and Tudor London after dark. That's a whole new level of nope. There are no streetlights, no patrol cars, no comforting hum of civilization. Just flickering torches, the occasional lantern, and shadows that don't always stay where they're supposed to. You shuffle toward the market, using a wooden beam as a makeshift crutch. The stalls are mostly shut now, their awnings rolled up and goods long gone. A few vendors linger, counting coins or arguing over scraps. You keep your head down. You're learning. The less you draw attention, the better your odds. But your stomach has other plans. It growls so loud a nearby dog looks up. You spot a woman scooping up spoiled vegetables from the street. Rotten onions, bruised apples, wilted cabbage leaves. She works fast, stuffing them into a ragged sack. Her fingers are stained. Her eyes dart around like a hunted animal's. You nod at her, silently asking for a share. She looks you over, then tosses a half-eaten turnip your way. It hits your chest and bounces to the ground. You pick it up, brush off the worst of the dirt and bite in. It tastes like old shoes and despair, but you finish it. A few blocks over you hear shouting. Angry, urgent shouting. You freeze, heart pounding. A crowd's forming near the edge of the market square. Not a festival crowd, not a party. This is something else. You hobble closer, sticking to the edges. A man is on the ground, clutching his face, blood seeping between his fingers. Two others argue above him, and then, bam! One pulls a knife. People cheer. Cheer. You're not at a crime scene. You're at a market brawl. A completely normal part of the Tudor public experience. Pickpockets, scammers, black market deals gone wrong. It all happens out in the open. You turn to leave and bump directly into a man with a tattered cloak and one eye. He glares at you. What's your business? Just looking, you say quickly, not buying, not stealing. He grunts and pushes past you, but the damage is done. A few other faces turn your way. You feel the weight of suspicion building again, brick by invisible brick. In Tudor London, suspicious behaviour can mean almost anything, and if someone decides to cry thief, well, good luck. Trials, if they happen at all, are fast and usually end with something being chopped off. You move quickly, well, quickly for someone hobbling, and slip down a side alley, hoping to avoid more confrontations. The alley is narrow, damp, and lined with decaying trash. You press against a wall to avoid stepping on something that might be a dead cat, then immediately regret touching the wall. It's sticky. You don't investigate further. Here's a historical fun fact for your nightmares. The market square was not just for buying food, it was also where pickpockets flourished. Some were so skilled they could strip you of your belt and coin purse without you noticing. Others were more direct, just punch, grab, and run. Thievery was rampant and punishments were brutal. Fingers cut off, ears notched, or worse. You manage to make it to the edge of the square and collapse beside a boarded-up doorway. Your ankle is swollen now, your stomach still growling, and your head is pounding from a combo of dehydration, stress, and maybe early-stage plague. Who's to say? A boy walks past dragging a bundle of firewood. He stops, eyes you for a long moment, then says, "You're going to get robbed sitting there." "Thanks," you mutter. "I'll add it to the list." "Come on then," he says. "You look like a drowned rat. My mum won't like it, but she won't throw you out. Not right away." You blink. An offer. Not a great one, but better than dying in a gutter. You follow, limping after him down a narrow lane lit by flickering torchlight. The houses here are smaller, more cramped, and somehow even more slanted. Every building looks like it's trying to fall on the one beside it. He leads you into a house through a door that barely clears your shoulders. Inside, it's warmer, thanks to a fire pit, and smells strongly of boiled cabbage and wet socks. A woman glances up from stirring a pot and immediately scowls. "What's this?" "Stray I found," the boy says. "Looks half dead." The woman sighs and waves you toward a corner. "Don't touch anything. You lice-ridden?" "Probably," you say. She nods, satisfied with your honesty. You sit on a pile of straw and feel the warmth seep into your skin. The pain's still there, but for now, you're safe. Or at least safer than you were out in the street. The woman ladles something into a wooden bowl and passes it to you. You don't ask what's in it. You eat. And now for the nightly debate. How did ordinary people survive the violence and crime of Tudor Street life? Some historians argue the neighbourhoods policed themselves. Tight-knit communities watching each other's backs. Others say fear and reputation did the trick. Be too odd, too foreign, or too alone, and the system turned on you like a hungry dog. You're starting to see both sides. As the fire crackles and the food settles in your stomach, your eyelids grow heavy. The boy offers you a piece of cloth as a blanket. You thank him. It smells like goats, but who are you to complain? You curl up on the straw, bruised, battered, and very, very aware that the only reason you're still breathing is a complete stranger's whim. London at night is just as dangerous as it is during the day, maybe more, but for now, you're inside and alive. Just don't expect that to last. You don't sleep well. Of course you don't. The straw pokes through the goat-scented cloth like it's actively trying to assassinate your spine, and every creak of the crooked old house sounds like someone breaking in to murder you for your non-existent coin. The fire dies down sometime after midnight, leaving the room cold and damp, and you can hear rats in the walls, like plural. They have names, social hierarchies, possibly a community theatre programme, and then there's the coughing. Not yours, not yet, but someone in the next room is hacking up something that sounds like their soul, a wet, sticky sound that refuses to stop. When you do finally doze off, it's shallow and full of feverish dreams, faceless crowds shouting in Latin, a disembodied voice yelling, "Harlot!" for no reason at all. You wake up around dawn with your heart racing and your ankle throbbing like it's been personally insulted. Your mouth is so dry you could sand furniture with your tongue. The woman from last night is already up, muttering to herself as she stirs something in a blackened pot over the fire. It smells like boiled sadness. You sit up slowly, trying not to look too much like a useless heap. "You'll have to earn your keep if you're staying," she says without turning. "No room for slugs." You nod. "Fair." "What do you need?" you croak. She looks at your ankle, then shrugs. "Sweep the hearth. Fetch water if you can hobble, and if not, keep out of the way." You sweep. Badly. The broom is more stick than bristle, and the soot just kind of resettles 2 feet to the left. But you try, and the boy, his name, it turns out, is Will, seems to appreciate the effort. He tosses you a crust of bread and a nod of approval like a tiny streetwise king. By mid-morning, you're back on the streets. Will insists on dragging you out for air, which is generous given that the London air is about 60% smoke and 40% pig-related particles. Your ankle still aches, but you're managing a slow, lopsided limp. It gives you character, or pity. Either works. The streets are already busy. Traders yelling, carts rattling over cobblestones, horses doing what horses do best all over the place. You sidestep a particularly ominous puddle and watch as a woman walks straight through it, shoes and all, without a flinch. You're still adjusting. That's when you see it. A strange red mark painted on the door of a narrow home. Just a thick, crude X in what might be paint, or something less paint-like. The windows are shuttered, and there's a single candle burning behind the cracks. You glance at Will. "Plague house," he says matter-of-factly. You stop walking. "Like, the plague?" Will shrugs. "Might be. Could be sweat or pox, no one knows. But if someone gets sick and can't pay the doctor, they mark the house. No one in, no one out. And just like that, your stomach does a full backflip. Let's pause for our historical horror moment. The plague wasn't a one-time visitor in Tudor England. It was a recurring character, like the worst sitcom guest star. Bubonic plague, sweating sickness, smallpox, measles, typhus. It was a smorgasbord of medieval misery. And if your household showed symptoms, You could be locked inside, nailed shut, food left outside, and a prayer said in advance. This open-air quarantine method is still hotly debated. Some scholars argue it was wildly inhumane, others claim it saved lives. Either way, it was terrifying. And here's the thing, no one actually knows what causes it. They blame smells, bad air, too much wetness in your humours, witches, foreigners, divine wrath, cats, pretty much everything except the actual cause. So naturally the solutions range from weird to horrifying. Quirky fact, one common cure for plague was to pluck the feathers off a chicken and strap it, alive, to the infected area. When the chicken died, as it inevitably did, they'd swap it out for another, believing the bird had absorbed the illness. Yes, this happened. Yes, it was exactly as unsanitary as it sounds. Back in the street, you're suddenly hyper-aware of everyone around you, every cough, every sniffle. That man scratching his neck too aggressively. Is he sick? Are you sick? Is time travel even immune to medieval bioterror? You pull your borrowed cloak tighter around you and try to look healthy, despite feeling like a walking science experiment. Will leads you to another square where a group of street performers is gathering. A man in striped hose and a feathered cap is juggling while shouting something about God's mercy and pickled onions. A crowd forms. Laughter, music, a brief escape from the horror. And then, a scream. Not dramatic, just sharp and sudden. A woman's voice. The crowd parts like water and you see her. A girl, maybe 17, collapsed on the cobblestones, shaking. Her skin is pale, her lips blue. A vendor drops his basket and runs. Someone else starts crying. "She's got it!" someone yells. And just like that, the crowd scatters. You're nearly trampled. People shove, trip, scream. A man grabs your arm and hisses, "Don't touch her, fool!" before vanishing into the chaos. The girl's mother kneels beside her, trying to cover her with a shawl, shouting something about heat and hunger. But no one listens. She's already marked. You back away slowly, breathing hard, heart thumping in your ears. You feel the edges of panic wrapping around your brain like cold fingers. You need to get out of this street. You need air. Clean air. A doctor. A 21st century vaccine. Something. Anything. But here now, all you have is Will, who looks up at you and says, "It's best to run if you can." So you do. Limping, gasping, ducking through alleys until you're sure no one followed. You collapse beside a stone wall, sweat mixing with grime, lungs burning. You've just had your first real taste of public plague panic, and it's not going to be your last. It takes a long time for your heart to stop hammering against your ribs. You sit in a shadowed alcove behind what you hope is a disused tannery, trying to breathe through your shirt because everything smells like boiled feet and spoiled vinegar. Your ankle throbs like it's auditioning for a Shakespearean tragedy, and your thoughts are spiraling fast. You just saw a girl collapse, and the crowd didn't even hesitate. They fled like she was already a corpse. That kind of reaction doesn't come from rational fear. It's instinct. Conditioned collective trauma. This city has seen too many plagues. Will finds you eventually, crouching beside a pile of discarded firewood like it's a chaise lounge. He doesn't say much, just sits down beside you and picks dirt from his fingernails with a nail the size of a finger bone. After a while he says, "She might just have been tired. Or hungry." You nod, but you both know it doesn't matter. The second someone goes pale or wobbly, they're socially dead, even if they're not physically gone yet. No trial, no test, no waiting period, just instant exile. You glance around the alley. It's lined with half-rotted barrels, the broken remains of a wheel, and a suspicious-looking bundle that may or may not contain a foot. London doesn't bother hiding its horrors. It piles them in plain view, and that's when you hear it. Church bells. Not the usual hourly toll, this one's different. Slower. 5-second pause between each strike. A death knell. "Someone's gone," Will says softly. You swallow. It could be anyone. A noble. A beggar. A child. Doesn't matter. In Tudor London, death is aggressively democratic. Rich. Poor. Pious. Sinful. Everyone ends up in the same cold, overcrowded pit eventually. Time to get moving. Will leads you down a narrow lane, the buildings leaning so close they practically kiss above you. Every surface is a shade of grime. The air is thick with damp smoke, and your shirt clings to your skin with a wet, oily chill. You come to a small stone church with a slanted cemetery out front. The headstones tilt like drunks. You catch sight of 2 men digging a fresh grave, not particularly deep, and tossing in quicklime before the body's even fully lowered. You don't know who's inside the cloth shroud, but they aren't alone. The grave already holds 2 others. Here's a dark fact you didn't ask for, but now have to live with. In plague seasons, they didn't bury people one by one. Graves were reused, recycled, shared. A macabre version of bunk beds, except with more rats and existential dread. Standing there, you start to realise something. Something that should have hit you sooner. You don't belong to any religion. Not here, not now. And in Tudor England, religion isn't just personal belief. It's politics, legality and survival, all rolled into one terrifying doctrine. You try to look casual as you ask Will, "So, who's in charge now?" He raises an eyebrow. "Of London?" "No, I mean, religiously. Are we Catholic or Protestant?" Will squints at you like you just asked whether rain is wet. "We're Protestant. Now, at least." Till someone changes it again. And that's when it clicks. This is the era of religious roulette. Henry VIII broke from Rome, right? Created the Church of England so he could divorce his wife and marry Anne Boleyn. Then after him, there's Edward VI, Protestant reformer. Then Mary I swings the pendulum back to Catholicism and starts burning people alive. And then Elizabeth I stabilises it again under Protestantism. Sort of. You don't know exactly where you are in that roller coaster, but one wrong word, one misremembered prayer, one comment about the Virgin Mary could get you flagged as a heretic. Or worse, a papist. And let's just say Tudor punishments are never subtle. Will doesn't seem to notice your panic. He's too busy tying a knot in a bit of string, possibly for fun, possibly as some weird time-specific fidget toy. You stand, testing your ankle. It still hurts, but it's holding. You both head toward a small crowd gathering outside the church. The priest emerges. Older man, pinched face, eyes like wet pebbles. He wears plain black robes with a stiff white collar. "The soul has departed," he announces without ceremony. "Let us pray for the living." Everyone bows their heads. You follow suit, mimicking the others. But when the priest starts speaking, your blood goes cold. It's not the words. It's that you don't know the words. They're in English, sure, but it's a liturgy you don't recognise. And if you mouth along incorrectly, someone might notice. Your lips move in vague shapes. A woman beside you frowns. You turn it into a cough. A man 2 rows ahead glances over his shoulder. You close your eyes, pretend to be emotional. It's a tightrope act, and it's terrifying. Here's your scholarly debate for the day. How strictly were these religious rituals monitored? Some historians say local churches were casual, more focused on keeping the peace than sniffing out apostates. Others argue there were informants in every pew ready to report you for mispronouncing the Lord's Prayer. Given the Tudor obsession with loyalty and purity, you're betting on the latter. After the prayers, the crowd disperses. Will tugs your sleeve. "Let's go." This place gives me the shivers. You agree. You're already mentally drafting a list of religious phrases to memorise. "God save the Queen" seems safe. Avoid Latin. Avoid criticising the Book of Common Prayer. Definitely don't mention the Pope. And if someone asks what church you belong to, say St. Mary's and hope it's a common one. The sun's higher now, but the chill hasn't lifted. The smoke from dozens of hearths still coats the sky, turning it a jaundiced grey. You head back toward the market district, hoping to scavenge something edible. Along the way you pass another house with a red X, then another. One is marked with black soot, not paint, the X smeared like someone used their bare hand. Will sees you staring. They say if you die of the sweat, your ghost walks until your body's burned. You try to laugh, but your throat's too dry. Tudor superstitions are their own category of nightmare. They believed in spirits, omens, cursed wells, and that sneezing could let the devil in unless someone blessed you fast enough. Medicine, mysticism, and religion all blurred together. A dog howls somewhere in the distance. Someone's yelling at a pig in the next alley. And as you limp down the filthy street trying to remember if Protestants crossed themselves with the left or right hand, you realise something profound. This isn't just about surviving the filth, or the food, or the labour. It's about not being noticed. Because in Tudor Britain, being noticed is almost always the beginning of the end. You never thought flirting could be dangerous. Sure, rejection stings, and sometimes people get weird on dating apps. But back home, the worst thing that happens after a bad pickup line is mild embarrassment. In Tudor Britain, though, try flirting the wrong way, or with the wrong person, and you might end up married, flogged, or executed. Possibly all 3. It starts innocently enough. You and Will are making your way through a side alley near the cloth market, where bolts of rough wool hang like limp flags, and everyone smells like wet sheep. Your ankle's feeling slightly better, or maybe it's just gone numb, and the idea of conversation with someone other than a 12-year-old boy is appealing. That's when you see her. She's maybe your age, standing behind a stall where she's selling little bundles of herbs tied with twine. Her apron is smeared with green and brown, her sleeves rolled up, and she's got this confidence about her, like someone who could shiv you with a rosemary sprig if you stepped out of line. She's arguing with a man who's clearly trying to short her a coin, and the way she calls him a gutless turnip makes your brain forget for just a moment that you're supposed to be blending in. She catches you staring. You quickly look away. Too late. She smirks. Oh no. Will notices. Don't be a mooncalf, he mutters. She's not for the likes of you. You decide to say something anyway. Not because it's smart, it isn't, but because you're hungry for normal human interaction. Nice herbs, you say, stepping toward the stall. You immediately regret it. She raises an eyebrow. That the best you've got? You blink. I just meant the bundles. They look fresh. Well done, she says deadpan. You've correctly identified plant matter. Truly a scholar. Will groans behind you. Still, she doesn't tell you to leave. In fact, she picks up a bunch of lavender and shoves it into your hands. Maybe this'll cover whatever's rotting under that tunic. You should walk away. Any reasonable person would walk away, but your brain, possibly concussed from earlier, thinks she might be flirting back. You always this kind to customers. She leans forward slightly. Only the ones who look like they crawled out of a plague cart. Will tugs your sleeve. Come on. You smile awkwardly and back away with what's left of your dignity, still clutching the lavender like a trophy. But the damage is done. You've attracted attention, and not just hers. Here's the thing about courtship in Tudor England. It's not casual. Marriage is a social contract, often involving dowries, family alliances, and more paperwork than you'd expect from a time when most people couldn't write their own name. Flirting isn't just risky, it can be interpreted as a promise, or worse, a proposal. And don't even get started on what happens if someone thinks you're being indecent. Say the wrong thing, even jokingly, and you could be hauled before a local magistrate for lewd behaviour. Or, if you're very unlucky, accused of soliciting, especially if you're a woman. There were laws in place allowing authorities to brand prostitutes with hot irons. Literally. Branding. With letters. Because nothing says justice like permanently burning someone's face. So yes, your innocent lavender-scented conversation could have gone sideways in about 6 different ways. Also, fun fringe fact, Tudor love tokens weren't just poems and flowers. People gave their beloved spoons. Pewter, silver, even wooden spoons, often engraved with hearts or initials. If you wanted to really show someone you cared, you handed them something they could stir soup with. Romantic, right? Back on the main street, Will is giving you a look usually reserved for people who poke bears with sticks. You're going to end up in the stocks, he mutters. Or worse. You try to defend yourself. I was just being friendly. In this world, he scoffs, friendly gets you married or buried. You decide to drop it. But the universe doesn't. Later that afternoon, you're limping past a row of houses when 2 men suddenly step out and block your path. One is tall and thin, the other squat and scowling. They wear mismatched jerkins and have the casual menace of men who enjoy making people disappear. You, the short one says, jabbing a finger at your chest. You spoke to my cousin this morning. You blink. What? The herb seller, he snaps. Mary. She's kin. Will steps forward, trying to look taller than he is. No harm done, just words. Words lead to deeds, the tall man says flatly. You raise your hands. I wasn't... Look, I'm new. I didn't mean anything by it, Shorty sneers. That's the problem. You mean nothing. No master, no guild, no name. He spits on the ground. Could be a vagrant, could be worse. You realise with sinking horror that this might escalate, and not just to a scuffle. If they accuse you of harassing her, or say you offended her virtue, you could be dragged before the local constable, or publicly punished. Stocks, whipping, humiliation at best, mutilation at worst. Thankfully, Mary herself shows up. She pushes between them and plants herself in front of you like a feral cat. He's daft, not dangerous, she snaps. Leave off. I've had worse from priests. They grumble, but back down. Not because they respect her, you realise, but because she clearly has a reputation for not backing down. You try to thank her, but she just rolls her eyes. Next time you fancy someone, try blinking less like a dying owl. You smile despite yourself. Noted. But once she's gone, the weight of the encounter crashes down. You were this close to real trouble, and all because you said 6 words to the wrong woman in the wrong decade. Let's talk open debates. Historians are still divided on how free people really were in Tudor courtship. Some argue it was a surprisingly lively social scene, with dances, maypoles, and coded flirtation. Others insist strict supervision, arranged marriages, and brutal consequences ruled the day. Honestly, from where you're standing, ankle aching, pride wounded, it's a terrifying mix of both. You've learned a valuable lesson. Don't flirt unless you're ready to explain yourself in front of a magistrate, her father, and possibly God. You limp on, chastened. No more sweet-talking anyone who looks like they might own a knife, or a cousin with anger issues, or a stall near anything sharp. Because in Tudor Britain, love doesn't just hurt, it convicts. You don't talk to anyone else for the rest of the day. Not the street peddlers hawking greasy pies that smell like regret. Not the barefoot child trying to trade a mouse skull for a kiss. You're not even going to unpack that. And definitely not the man ranting about how Queen Elizabeth is secretly a man in disguise sent by the French to poison England with sugar. You just nod, keep walking, and pretend your very existence isn't a massive security risk. Because after the herb cellar situation, you've learned something crucial about this place. Words can ruin you. Fast. It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. Who hears it? Whether or not they like the sound of your voice, or your face, or your shoes, or the way your eyes dart when you're nervous. And the more you think about it, the more it starts to feel like the real danger in Tudor Britain isn't the plague or the starvation or the garbage-flavoured air, it's speech. Open your mouth at the wrong time, in the wrong place, and you're one bad sentence away from losing your head. You pass a group of men leaning against a church wall, speaking in hushed tones. One of them glances at you, and you swear he memorises your face. You pretend not to notice. Keep walking, keep breathing. Will meets up with you again near the edge of the market. He's holding a small cloth pouch and a smug expression. "Look," he says, pulling out a few coins. "Helped an apothecary carry leeches. Paid proper." You try to act impressed. Honestly, you're just relieved to see a familiar face. "That's great. Really. Could be worse," he says. "Could be caught talking treason like you." You stop. "What?" Will shrugs. "Heard you muttering about the Queen's name wrong." You stare at him. "When? Where?" He shrugs again. "Doesn't matter." Someone hears you say the wrong thing, they tell a priest. Or a constable. Next thing you're wearing a rope necklace. Fantastic. So now even accidental muttering is high risk. Here's your historical speed bump of the day. Treason laws in Tudor England were so broad you could trip over one just by thinking too loudly. Say something offhand about the monarch. Treason. Question the church's authority. Treason. Joke about the wrong noble. Still treason. Even writing a poem with ambiguous metaphors could get you in serious trouble if someone with more power decided it offended their honour. And since England during the 16th century is basically a live-action surveillance state, minus the tech but plus the torture, there are ears everywhere. Church wardens, neighbours, servants, children. Even your own family might rat you out if they think it'll save their skin. That brings us to a less fun fringe fact. In 1584, there was a law requiring everyone to report seditious speech. If you didn't, you were guilty too. So keeping quiet about someone else's slip-up could make you just as punishable. A national snitch program, basically. Which makes what happens next especially deeply unfortunate. You and Will are weaving your way through the muddy lanes behind the cathedral when you hear it. Someone shouting. Not just random street rage, but specific anger. Loud, accusatory. You turn a corner and see a man, middle-aged, balding and beet red in the face, screaming at a group of children. They scatter like terrified pigeons, except for one boy who's frozen with fear. The man grabs him by the collar. "I heard what you said, you little worm," he roars. "You think the Queen's a heretic?" The boy stammers something unintelligible. The man shakes him. "Answer me!" People are watching now silently like they're all deciding whether to run or join in. And you make the fatal mistake of stepping forward. "Hey," you say. "He's just a kid." The man turns slowly, eyes narrowing. "And who are you?" You glance at Will. He shrugs in a way that says, "I warned you. I'm no one, you say quickly. Just saying. Maybe ease off. He didn't mean anything. The man lets go of the boy, but not because he's convinced. It's because now you're the more interesting target. Strange voice, he mutters. Strange face. You from London? You nod too quickly. Yes, absolutely. Which parish? Your brain does cartwheels. You remember your emergency backup answer. St. Mary's. Which one? He asks. There's 5. That's when your brain leaves the building entirely. You blurt the first name that sounds remotely plausible. St. Mary? Hatchet. Silence. Even Will winces. The Hatchet, the man repeats, stepping closer. Never heard of it. Well, you say weakly, it's small, very exclusive, and now the entire street is watching. The man turns to them and gestures at you with theatrical disgust. This one's no Londoner. You hear the way he talks? Someone mutters spy. Someone else says Catholic, and just like that you're standing in the centre of a powder keg. You raise your hands. I'm not a Catholic, I swear. Oh no, you said it. The word. It hangs there like a rotten pear, and for a second no one breathes. Then the man steps forward. Only a Catholic says they're not a Catholic first. Fun little detail. During Elizabeth's reign, being Catholic wasn't just unpopular, it was borderline criminal. Mass was outlawed. Priests were hunted, and if you were found harbouring one, that could mean death. Protestant England lived in constant fear of Catholic rebellion, foreign invasion, and secret masses happening in damp cellars. There's a debate even now among historians about how strictly average citizens policed each other for religious signs. Some say people looked the other way unless directly threatened. Others insist entire neighbourhoods functioned like zealot hives, sniffing out anything remotely papist. You're betting on the second. Someone grabs your arm. Will again. Run. You do. You bolt down the alley, past startled vendors, across a pile of manure and into another maze of twisting streets. You don't stop until your lungs burn and your ankle screams and your entire body is one big regret. You collapse behind a tavern, breathing like a dying bellows. Will lands beside you, panting. You, he says between gasps, are really bad at this. You nod. Yeah. You stare at the sky for a while. There's a gull circling above, probably hoping you'll keel over so it can peck your eyes out. Another day in Tudor England. Another near-death experience. All because you opened your mouth. At this point, you've started to accept that merely existing in Tudor England is a full-time hazard. Every hour you survive is a minor miracle, and every conversation is a trap you've only narrowly avoided falling into head first. You're jumpy now, like a stray cat in a thunderstorm. Every street you walk down, you expect someone to yell witch or papist, or that one owes me turnips, and kick off the next disaster. So naturally your next blunder isn't something you say, it's what you wear. It happens the following morning. Will's mum, whose name you're still not clear on because she refuses to repeat herself and insists on being called mistress, which feels very loaded, hands you a bundle of clothes. She's gotten tired of seeing you in the same muddy, urine-scented tunic for days on end, which to be fair is totally understandable. You'd trade an organ for clean socks. The clothes she gives you aren't fancy. A rough woolen doublet, a clean shirt, blessed be, and a pair of hose that itch like they were sewn from stinging nettles. But after so many days of filth, they feel like royal robes. You scrub off in a freezing rain barrel behind the house, doing your best not to scream out loud every time a breeze hits you in the kidneys. Then you pull on the new outfit and step into the street like a new man. Big mistake. At first, people just stare. Nothing overt. Just side glances. A pause too long, an upturned nose here, a narrowed eye there. You assume it's the usual, who's that limping stranger reaction, until Will comes around a corner and physically drags you into an alley like you've just shouted Viva the Pope in a public square. What are you wearing? He demands. You blink. Clean clothes? He points at your doublet. That colour, that's for nobles. You look down. It's a deep blue. Nice, yes, but nothing dramatic. Still, Will's face is pure panic. Do you want to get hanged for impersonating gentry? Wait, that's a crime? Will gapes at you like you've just said water is optional. Course it is. Sumptuary laws. You can't just wear whatever you like, you twit. Ah, sumptuary laws. You do vaguely remember hearing about those. Rules about who could wear what based on their rank in society. The Tudor government didn't just control behaviour, they micromanaged fashion. Your colour, your fabric, even your buttons said something about your status. Wearing the wrong thing wasn't just tacky, it was illegal. Let's get into a bit of history, since your life literally depends on it. Under these laws, only certain people, usually nobility or those with special permission, could wear specific colours like deep blue, purple, crimson, or gold. Materials like silk or velvet were out of reach for anyone under a certain income level. Even fur had rules. Rabbit fur? Fine. Ermine. You'd better have a title or a death wish. The logic was clear. Keep people in their place, and if someone stepped out of a line, it wasn't just a slap on the wrist. You could be fined, publicly shamed, or worse, accused of trying to pass yourself off as someone above your station, an act seen as a form of treason. And now here you are, with your borrowed doublet from a well-meaning but clearly chaotic woman, standing in an alley while your 12-year-old guide lectures you on how not to be executed for fashion. Take it off, Will hisses. In public, you ask, because that's not going to raise questions? He groans and yanks you by the sleeve toward the back of a blacksmith shop. Inside, it's hotter than Satan's crawl space and smells like sweat and burning hoof. Will convinces the apprentice to swap you for a drabber, scratchier, less treasonous outfit. In return, you agree to sweep out the back room. You do this poorly, because broom technology hasn't evolved yet, and also because you're deeply distracted by the fact that you almost died over a shirt. Now in a dull brown tunic and hose that smell like sheep barn and disappointment, you limp back into the street, somehow feeling more like yourself. Here's a lesser-known quirky fact. Some people actually broke sumptuary laws on purpose to show off their wealth. Merchants especially, rich, self-made types who weren't noble by blood but had money to burn. They'd wear fancier fabrics than technically allowed and just risk the fine. A bold power move, but not one you're equipped for. You don't even have a coin to buy cheese, let alone flaunt illegal buttons. But this whole debacle reminds you, everything in this world is political. Even clothing, even colours. You start to notice it now, how people pause when a well-dressed man passes, how the market stalls subtly shift in tone when someone of higher status approaches. Your borrowed shoes, which don't match and have two different laces, are no longer just uncomfortable. They're a liability. Open scholarly debate time. Were sumptuary laws strictly enforced or mostly symbolic? Some argue they were just a way to reinforce social hierarchy, more honoured in the breach than the observance. Others point to actual court records and punishment lists. Either way, they were real enough to put fear into Will's voice and knock several months off your lifespan in sheer stress. As the afternoon creeps in, the sky growing thick with low, greasy clouds, you pass by a group of apprentices whispering outside a tavern. One of them laughs, nods toward you, and says something you don't catch, but the others all turn to stare. You nod politely and shuffle on. Do they know me? You ask Will. They know of you, he replies. The stranger, the one who talks too clean, the one who wore blue. Perfect. By evening, you're back at Mistress's place, trying to avoid eye contact while you gnaw on a crust that might be older than Elizabeth herself. Will is fiddling with a mousetrap and humming. The house smells of smoke, cabbage, and judgment. You lie down on the straw pile, still itchy, still sore, and now completely paranoid that a tailor is going to burst in and yell, "Criminal fabric!" before dragging you to the stocks. One thing's for sure, next time you think you want to time travel, maybe pick a century where cotton doesn't get you killed. You wake up to shouting. Not angry shouting this time, though at this point you're not sure there is any other kind in Tudor England, but something more frenzied. Urgent. A dog barks. Someone outside yells, "Fetch the constable!" And that's enough to launch you from your scratchy straw bed straight into another day of possible doom. The house is already half empty. Mistress is gone, probably chasing down a debt or scolding the baker's wife again, and Will is nowhere in sight. You hobble to the door and peer out, expecting the usual chaos. Drunk apprentice face down in a puddle, vendor screaming about turnip theft, someone throwing a shoe at a goose. But this time it's different. People are gathered in a loose circle near the square. They're watching something, but no one's laughing. That's your first clue this is going to be one of those traumatizing for life moments. You limp closer. The air is heavy with smoke and nervous energy. You hear murmurs, witch, poisoner, devil's bride. The usual bedtime fairy tale language. When you finally make it to the edge of the crowd, you see her. A woman, middle-aged, with hair that might have once been red, tied to a wooden post, arms bound tightly, eyes wide but eerily calm. Her dress is muddy, torn at the hem, and she's muttering something to herself, over and over. It takes a minute to realise it's a prayer, and then you see the pile of brush at her feet. Nope. No, no, no. You turn to the man next to you. What did she do? He shrugs like it's not even interesting. Said she healed a baby with a fox's tooth. Then the baby died. Her neighbour swore she saw her whispering at her cat. That's it. That's all it took. A dead baby, a neighbour's gossip, and a cat. This is your introduction to the paranoid fever dream that is Tudor witchcraft panic. See, we tend to imagine these trials as strictly a later thing, Salem and all that, but Tudor England was laying the groundwork. Witchcraft was officially made a capital offence in 1542, then repealed, then reinstated under Elizabeth I in 1563. Under her law, practising witchcraft that resulted in death could get you executed. No solid evidence required, just suspicion, local outrage, and maybe a moon that looked off. You take a slow breath and step back into the crowd, trying to shrink into the background. The accused woman is speaking now louder. I never cursed her, babe. I made a poultice, that's all. The child was already ill. No one listens. Someone throws a clump of mud. Another woman yells, "Devil wife!" in a voice so sharp it could peel bark. The crowd is growing louder, uglier. Then a man in black robes steps forward. Clearly some form of authority, though whether he's a priest, a judge, or just the best-dressed angry man in town, you're not sure. He unfurls a scroll and begins to read a litany of her supposed crimes. Unlicensed healing, unnatural knowledge of herbs, consorting with familiars. The list sounds more like a resume than an indictment. You think back to Mary the herb seller, the one who gave you lavender and attitude, the one who knew her way around roots and tinctures. How many people look at her the same way? How close is she to ending up at the centre of one of these crowds? The historical debate here is a chilling one. Were most Tudor witch trials the result of actual belief in magic, or were they just convenient excuses to punish inconvenient women? Widows, midwives, healers, women who refused to marry. Anyone who didn't fit neatly into society's mould was fair game. Some scholars argue that these trials were less about religion and more about controlling the fringes of society. You're inclined to agree, because what you're watching doesn't feel like justice, it feels like theatre. A soldier appears with a torch. People cheer, you flinch. But then, just as he raises it, someone shouts, "Wait!" A second man approaches, taller, wearing city official colours. He unrolls another document and speaks with authority. By order of the magistrate, the accused is to be taken to the jail for formal interrogation. There's a groan of disappointment from the crowd. Actual disappointment, like someone just cancelled the main act at a festival. The woman sags with relief as she's untied from the post, though the ropes leave raw red marks on her arms. She's dragged off toward a cart, her head lowered, lips still moving in silent prayer. It's a temporary reprieve, and you know it. She may not burn today, but she's still trapped in a system built on fear and scapegoats. You stumble away from the scene, bile rising in your throat. You've seen violence since arriving here, sure, but this was ritual. Communal cruelty cloaked in faith and law. The worst part is that most of the people watching feel safer because of it. You duck into a side street, shaking and lean against a wall. A child runs past with a pretend broomstick, laughing and shouting, "I'm a witch! Catch me!" You almost throw up. Quirky fact, some witch tests involved poking suspects with needles to see if they had a devil's mark. If the accused didn't bleed or flinch, it proved guilt. So naturally, professional witch prickers kept retractable needles or just jabbed scar tissue. It's like medieval science fair, but the prize is death. That night, back at Mistress's house, the mood is tense. Even Will is quiet. Mistress herself is visibly on edge, double-barring the door and muttering about dreams of birds with human eyes. You don't ask. You're done asking questions for the day. As you settle onto your straw bed, heart still pounding, one thought plays on repeat. You are dangerously adjacent to people who could be burned alive for having a bad reputation and a decent herb garden. And worse, you might be next. You close your eyes and imagine returning home. The hum of electricity, the antiseptic smell of a drugstore. A world where being weird is annoying, not fatal. But for now, you're here, among torch-wielding neighbours and death by rumour. Sweet dreams. The next day, you're woken by the sound of something alive being tortured. For a moment you think it's another witch trial. Great, 2 for 1 week. But then the noise sharpens into a kind of rhythmic roaring. Deep, guttural, angry. It's not human. It's louder than any dog you've ever heard. Will appears in the doorway looking far too awake for someone who sleeps on straw and stale cabbage. You've never seen bear baiting, have you? You stare at him. That's a real question? As in, have I ever seen a bear being baited? He grins as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Come on, it's market day. There'll be music and everything. Of course you go. What else are you going to do, stay in the house and try to invent antibiotics out of turnips and prayers? Your ankle's stiff but functional now, and curiosity, as always, is the rope you're apparently going to hang yourself with. Will leads you across the bridge into Southwark, the lawless little sibling of the city proper. It's a different kind of chaos here. The streets are tighter, the pubs rowdier, and the mud somehow wetter. There's a buzz in the air, an excited festival kind of energy, but it feels off, like a party held in a graveyard. You hear music, drunken singing, and somewhere the crash of wood splintering under weight. Then you see it, the pit. It's a circular arena made of wooden planks, surrounded by cheering spectators, men leaning over the rails with tankards in hand. In the centre, a massive brown bear chained to a post, pacing nervously. The animal's fur is matted, its eyes wide, twitching with confusion. You take a breath, already regretting everything. Bear baiting, you now recall, was one of the Tudors' favourite pastimes, right up there with public executions, insulting foreigners, and dying young. The basic idea? Chain a bear to a stake, then unleash dogs on it for entertainment. Sometimes it's a single fight, other times it's a series, with multiple rounds and wagers on how long the bear will last. It's a big one today, Will says, munching on something that looks vaguely like a turnip. They brought the dogs in from Bristol. Mean ones. You nod, but your eyes are fixed on the bear. You can't look away. It's massive. Easily 8 feet long if it stood on its hind legs. But here, chained to the stake, it looks small, diminished. The crowd roars as a gate opens and the first dog charges in. A lean, muscular thing, snarling with its ears flattened. It leaps at the bear and you, stupidly, naively, hope it misses. It doesn't. The next few seconds are a blur of snapping jaws, flailing claws and blood. The bear roars in pain, swiping wildly. The dog yelps and rolls, then launches again. Another dog joins in, then a third. The crowd is in ecstasy. Men wave their hats. Women scream with laughter. Coins fly through the air as bets are called out. You want to vomit. Why do people enjoy this, you ask, throat dry. Will shrugs. It's just what we do. Better than watching chickens fight. You don't answer. You're too busy calculating the odds of getting out of here without a breakdown. Here's your historical fact of the day. Bear baiting wasn't just popular, it was state-sponsored. Even royalty enjoyed it. Henry VIII kept his own bear garden, and Elizabeth I attended matches regularly. It wasn't just blood sport, it was culture. There's even a record of an incident where the bear fought so long, the crowd begged for a break. Not for the bear, but for themselves, because they were tired of cheering. You step back from the rail and try not to look anymore, but then you hear something else. Music. Pipes and drums coming from the far end of the square. You follow it, anything to get away from the sound of teeth on fur, and find a second crowd forming around a different kind of performer. A dancing bear. This one is smaller, thinner, its fur patchy and limbs scarred. A handler tugs a rope around its neck and plays a little flute, while the bear lumbers awkwardly from foot to foot. The crowd claps in rhythm, amused by the grotesque mimicry of human dance. The handler shouts, "Clap louder, or he'll think you're not enjoying yourselves." The crowd obliges, the bear flinches. You turn away. Fun and grotesque fringe fact. Bear handlers sometimes taught their animals to dance by placing them on hot plates or coals, then playing music during the ordeal. Over time, the bear would associate the tune with the pain and move accordingly. Conditioning through cruelty. A living puppet. Will seems unbothered. You should have seen the monkey last week. He wore a doublet and everything. You nod weakly. I'm good, thanks. There's a scholarly debate you can't help but remember now. Were Tudor audiences desensitized to violence, or did they see it as catharsis? Was it entertainment born of brutality, or a ritual way to vent their own powerless rage? Some argue that public suffering allowed them to feel control in a chaotic world. Others say they genuinely didn't think animals, or even certain humans, felt the way we do. Either way, the outcome is the same: chains, blood, and applause. You head back toward the river, feet dragging, sole about 3 inches tall. As you pass the pit again, the bear has finally collapsed. It's still breathing. Barely. The dogs are barking for more. And the crowd, they're already turning away, moving on, looking for their next thrill. That night, you sit in silence at the hearth. Will's humming a folk song, Mistress is darning socks by firelight, and you're just there. Eyes open, mouth shut. You can still hear the bear in your head. You want to go home, desperately. But you're not even sure what home means anymore. You haven't felt clean in days. You haven't laughed without guilt. You've eaten things that should have been buried and worn clothes that could get you hanged. You're not surviving Tudor Britain. You're absorbing it. Slowly, horribly, piece by piece. And you're starting to understand why nobody here seems to notice the horror anymore. It's not that they don't see it. It's that they've seen too much. You wake to the sound of a chicken screaming. Not a squawk, not a gentle farmyard cluck, but a full-on blood-curdling shriek like someone lit its feathers on fire. You sit bolt upright in your straw nest, already preparing for another round of guess who's being tortured today. But Will pokes his head in a second later, looking completely unfazed. It's the cook, he says. She's prepping dinner. Dinner. You haven't thought about food since the bear incident. Your stomach's been too busy tying itself in knots. But now the idea of a real meal, something hot, something not boiled in sadness, suddenly seems worth risking your life for. Will offers you a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He's got a cousin working in the kitchens of a noble house just outside the city. They're short-staffed, and for the price of not complaining too loudly, you might be able to snag a spot scrubbing pots or turning spits. Will says you'll get fed, maybe even paid. At this point you'd eat sawdust if it came with gravy. The walk is long, muddy, and full of smells that make your nose want to fall off. But eventually you arrive at a stone manor house surrounded by low walls and chickens that all seem angry on principle. The air smells like smoke, meat, and damp wood. A complicated but promising perfume. You're led around the back, not through the grand front entrance, obviously. Nobles may love feasts, but they definitely don't want to see the human conveyor belt making them happen. The back door opens into the kitchen, and that's when the sensory assault begins. Heat. Immediate choking heat. The kind that punches you in the face and makes you question your life choices. The room is alive, truly alive, with movement. 3 boys are turning spits crammed with joints of meat. 2 women are skinning something that still looks upset about it. Someone else is grinding spices with enough aggression to qualify as a murder attempt. A thick, red-faced woman in an apron yells over her shoulder, "If you can stand, you can work. If not, go die in the yard." She sees you. "You knew?" You nod. She tosses you a cloth and points to a bucket. "Scullion." You scrub what's black and you don't talk. Welcome to the lowest rung of Tudor kitchen hierarchy. The scullion. You're basically one step above the rats, and only because rats don't have thumbs. Your job is to scrub pots, carry wood, haul water, and generally do anything no one else wants to do. There's a boy to your left who's about 9 and has a permanent streak of soot across his face. He hasn't spoken once. He might be a ghost. You don't ask. Your first pot is coated in something that could be tar or blood or some kind of medieval stew hybrid. You scrub. It doesn't help. The grime just sort of rearranges itself. Your hands blister almost immediately. The water is freezing, then scalding, then freezing again. Your sleeves are soaked, and something oily drips onto your neck from the rafters. You hope it's butter. You really hope it's butter. Fun historical fact. Tudor kitchens were chaotic, dangerous, and completely unregulated. Fire was a constant threat. Knives were everywhere, and the floors were so greasy you could ice skate across them if you didn't mind dying in front of a boiling cauldron. The kitchen is more like a factory than a room. The scale of things is absurd. Cauldrons the size of bathtubs, whole animals hanging from hooks, spices in such abundance it feels illegal. You recognize cinnamon and cloves, which seems unfair. How can this place have cinnamon when half the city's still eating mouldy pottage and shoe leather? Answer, nobles. They get everything. While the common folk are digging weevils out of barley, the lords and ladies are feasting on imported oranges and roasted peacock glazed with sugar and saffron. You catch a glimpse of the banquet hall as a servant rushes through, and it's like peering into another universe. Gilded candlesticks, rich tapestries, dishes so ornate they look more like props than dinnerware. You scrub another pan and try not to cry. The cook, her name's Maud, though you've mentally nicknamed her the Wrath of God, points to a spit and barks. You turn it. Slow, steady, no skipping. You obey. The heat from the fire is immediate and cruel. Sweat pours into your eyes. Your arms ache after 4 minutes. You turn that spit like your life depends on it, which, honestly, it might. Maud looks like the type to test food temperature with her fist. Quirky fact time. Some larger kitchens use specially trained turn-spit dogs. Yes, dogs. They'd run in a wheel like hamsters, which rotated the spit automatically. The practice eventually died out, not because it was cruel, which it was, but because mechanical devices replaced them. At least you're not a dog. Small victories. You're finally allowed to eat something after what feels like 17 years. A servant throws you a piece of bread and a slice of meat that's 80% gristle. You eat it so fast you don't even chew. The kitchen boys look at you with mild respect. You've joined the club of the half-dead. Toward the end of the day, disaster strikes. A scullion drops a tray. A silver tray. Everyone freezes. Maud turns, eyes narrowed. "That was the Lord's," she says. The boy stammers. I didn't... Go, she points to you. Take it up to the steward's chamber. Don't speak, don't look. This is the worst possible task. Entering the house. The real house. You wipe your hands on your already filthy tunic, pick up the tray, and climb the stone steps. Every creak of the floorboard sounds like an alarm. The inside is even more extravagant than you imagined. Painted ceilings, silk cushions, a clock. You try not to gape. You walk past a hallway lined with portraits of sour-faced ancestors and finally reach the steward's chamber. He barely glances up. You set the tray down, bow like an idiot. Why did you bow? And flee. You make it back to the kitchen alive, barely. No one cheers, no one speaks. You go back to scrubbing. By nightfall, you're walking back to Southwark with Will, your hands blistered, your feet numb, and your entire body smelling like meat smoke and charred onions. "So," Will says, "think you could be a cook?" "Not if it meant working with Maud," he laughs. "You'll get used to it." You won't, but you say nothing, because in Tudor Britain even the kitchen is a battlefield, and right now you're just grateful to be walking away from it. You're barely back in Southwark when you hear the bells. They're not cheerful wedding bells or the pleasant hourly chime from a sleepy church tower. No, these are heavy, slow, deliberate strikes, like thunder with a schedule, and every person within earshot seems to know what they mean, because they all start moving, not away, not to hide, but toward the sound, like it's entertainment, like it's worth missing supper for. You look at Will expecting him to say, "Let's not." Instead, he just says, "It's a hanging." "Of course it is." You try to protest. "Maybe we should not watch someone die today?" Will shrugs. "Best spots by the well. Come on." And just like that, you're swept along, ankle protesting, body aching, following a stream of townspeople toward the gallows. It's in a small square flanked by wooden buildings and wagons, with a crude platform already surrounded by the kind of buzz you'd expect at a festival. Vendors are selling pie, someone's roasting chestnuts, children run between carts with sticky fingers and empty pockets. A public execution in Tudor England isn't just justice, it's theatre, a social event, the kind of thing families plan their day around. You're horrified, and yet weirdly fascinated. You spot the platform at the far end of the square. It's plain, splintered, and disturbingly well used. There's a rope hanging from the crossbeam, swaying lazily in the breeze. A ladder leans against the back. It's all chillingly efficient. Then the condemned arrives. He's young, maybe 20, with a wild look in his eyes and a clump of matted hair hanging across his face. His hands are tied. His tunic is torn. A guard pushes him forward with the casual cruelty of someone who's done this 100 times. You lean toward a woman beside you and ask, "What did he do?" She doesn't even look at you. "Stole a loaf of bread." Your stomach drops. You wait for the punchline for her to say he also stabbed a priest or burned down a tavern. But no, that's it. A loaf of bread. Maybe there was more to the story. Maybe he threatened someone. Maybe he was a repeat offender, but here, none of that seems to matter. He stole, and now he dies. Fun historical fact. Under Tudor law, more than 200 offences could earn you the death penalty. Theft, poaching, vagrancy, even cutting down someone else's tree without permission. The punishments weren't just meant to fit the crime, they were meant to scare everyone else into obedience. The crowd shifts as the executioner appears. He's wearing a hood, not the dramatic black silk you see in movies, just a rough sackcloth with holes cut out. He doesn't say anything, just tightens the noose, yanks the condemned roughly into place and nods at the priest, who begins mumbling a rushed prayer. The man is shaking now. You can see it, even from the crowd. He says something you can't hear. The priest steps back. The crowd goes quiet. Then the trapdoor drops. It's over in seconds. No one gasps. No one screams. Someone even claps, just once, before thinking better of it. And then the noise returns. Conversations pick up again. The vendors shout louder. Kids laugh. The world continues as if a human being didn't just die 5 feet in front of them. You feel cold all over. Not from the wind, but from the sheer casualness of it. Will, sensing your silence, nudges your shoulder. First time, you nod. He shrugs. It's how things are. Everyone steals, but not everyone gets caught. Bad luck is all. You want to scream. You want to tell everyone here that this isn't normal, that you come from a world where a stolen loaf of bread gets you probation and community service, not a rope and an audience. But of course, you don't say a word. You just watch as they cut him down. 2 boys in matching jerkins pull the body into a cart. One of them makes a joke about how he twitches less than the last one. The other laughs and slaps the side of the cart like it's a barrel of fish. Quirky, horrifying fringe fact. If the family of the condemned didn't collect the body, it would often be sold to barbers or apothecaries for dissection, or worse, put on display as a warning. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about spectacle. There's a scholarly debate still ongoing about how the public reacted to these events. Some historians argue that regular exposure to executions desensitized the population. Others suggest that crowds felt genuine moral satisfaction, that these were sacred rituals of purification. Either way, from where you're standing, it feels less like a justice system and more like a weekly trauma parade. You and Will head back in silence. Even he's subdued. The streets feel darker now, the alleys narrower. You swear the city itself seems heavier, as if the death is still hanging in the air, stuck in the stones beneath your feet. Back at the house, Mistress is boiling something that smells like grief and turnips. She doesn't ask where you were. She already knows. You sit by the fire that night, staring into the embers. You think of the boy's face, his shaking hands. You wonder what he thought in those final moments. Was he angry? Afraid? Did he still think the bread was worth it? You remember the old story, Les Miserables? A man steals a loaf of bread and spends his life running. That always felt tragic. Romantic, even. But this? This is worse. There's no redemption arc here. No forgiveness. Just rope. And you're starting to see the brutal machinery of this world for what it really is. A place where being poor is a crime. Where mercy is weakness. Where every misstep is an opportunity for punishment, and every street corner could end in a gallows. You lie down that night and dream of rope, not around your neck but coiled, waiting, always waiting. Because in Tudor Britain justice isn't blind, it's just hungry. By now you've figured out a sort of rhythm to survival in Tudor Britain. It's not a comfortable rhythm, mind you, more like a drunken jig through a minefield, but it's something. You wake up, eat whatever's edible and doesn't look back at you, avoid speaking unless absolutely necessary, and try very hard not to attract the attention of people with weapons, power or torches. So far, this strategy has kept you mostly alive, until today, because today you wake up with a sore throat. At first you try to dismiss it. It's just the smoke, you tell yourself. Or maybe it's the unholy mix of boiled cabbage and whatever is rotting in the alley behind the house. Maybe it's the stress, or the straw, or the ghosts. Who knows? But by mid-morning you're coughing, dry at first, then wet, then persistent. Will notices. You sick? You wave him off. I'm fine. Mistake. Massive. Potentially fatal mistake. Because in Tudor Britain, being sick doesn't make people bring you soup and ask if you need tissues. It makes them back away. Or worse, lock you in a room and nail the door shut. Will eyes you. If you're coughing up black, I'm telling Mistress. I'm not coughing up black, you snap, then immediately cough into your sleeve. Something greyish comes out. Not great. Will's already edging away. You decide you need help. Actual help. Not leeches or a boiled garlic compress. You need someone with a basic understanding of biology. You need a doctor. Unfortunately, this is Tudor England, so what you get is something else entirely. Will agrees to take you to the local barber surgeon. That's not a fun mash-up word like brunch or spork. It's exactly what it sounds like. A man who cuts hair and limbs. The line between beauty and butchery is razor thin, literally. The barber surgeon's hut is dark, damp, and smells strongly of wine, blood, and regret. You step inside and immediately notice the tools. Saws, hooks, rusty blades, a bowl of something lumpy and red that you really hope is animal-based. There's also a pigeon in a cage. You don't ask. The man himself looks like he's been awake since the Norman Conquest. He's got a permanent squint, shaky hands, and teeth that belong in a museum of horrors. "What's your complaint, then?" he croaks, pulling on a leather apron that might once have been beige. You hesitate. "Just a cough." He looks at you like you've just confessed to a murder. Could be the sweat. Could be plague. Could be bile in the lungs. He says it cheerfully, like he's hoping for plague. "Let's bleed you and see." Before you can object, he's already tying a tourniquet around your arm with alarming confidence. Will stands off to the side, trying to look disinterested, but you can tell he's secretly fascinated. Here's your historical fact of the day. Bloodletting was one of the most common treatments in Tudor medicine. The logic was simple, in the worst way. Illness was caused by imbalances in the body's four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Too much of one? Time to drain it. Fever, bleed, cough, bleed, stubbed toe. Honestly, let's bleed it just in case. You try to pull your arm back, but the barber has already produced a knife that looks like it's seen at least 3 civil wars. He pricks your skin with surprising precision, and a warm trickle runs down your wrist. He nods, satisfied. Good colour, you're not dying yet. Then he releases a pigeon. No explanation. Just opens the cage and lets it flap around the room. It lands on a shelf and starts cooing. You blink. "Why the pigeon?" "Calms the humours," he says. "Also, they draw the bad air out." You glance at Will, who nods like this makes complete sense. The barber then offers you a syrup made from honey, vinegar, and ground snail shell. "To settle the lungs," he says, as if that's a normal sentence. It tastes like someone scraped the floor of a barn and added sugar. As a quirky fringe fact, this one's very real. Tudor medicine included all sorts of delightful ingredients: crushed emeralds, powdered mummies, yes, actual mummies, moss from a church roof, and urine-based ointments. If it existed and smelled funny, someone probably prescribed it. By the time you leave the hut, your arm is sore, your head is spinning, and your cough is worse. But you're technically treated. The barber tells you to come back tomorrow for more bleeding. You promise you will. You absolutely will not. On the way back, Will says, "You should try the wise woman. Her remedies don't make you faint." You pause. "Isn't that dangerous?" He shrugs. "Only if you tell people about it." The wise woman lives on the edge of Southwark, in a thatched hut surrounded by herbs, chickens, and suspicious cats. Her face is like old leather, and she doesn't say much. She watches you for a full minute before speaking. "You're not from here," she says. You freeze. She doesn't press. Just gives you a bundle of dried leaves and a salve that smells like mint and something sour. "Brew that. Rub this on your chest. Don't talk to the pigeons. You do exactly as she says. That night, you drink the bitter tea, smear the salve on your ribs, and wrap yourself in a blanket that still smells faintly of spit-roasted goose. And slowly, whether it's the herbs or just sheer willpower, the coughing eases. The rattle in your chest fades. You sleep. Scholars still debate the effectiveness of Tudor folk remedies. Were they rooted in real, empirical knowledge passed down through generations? Or were they just luck and superstition with a pleasant scent? Some argue wise women understood the body better than licensed physicians did. Others say it was trial and error with a side of duck feathers. All you know is, the barber surgeon bled you, the wise woman helped you, and tomorrow you'll still be alive. Probably. Which frankly is a medical miracle in itself. If you're still alive. That alone feels like a minor miracle. After your impromptu medical tour of Tudor horrors, your lungs have finally decided to calm down, and your cough, while not gone, is now just an occasional judgmental reminder that yes, you did let a barber bleed you, and yes, you did drink boiled herbs from a woman who talks to cats, but you're not dead. So that's progress. Unfortunately, being not dead in Tudor England comes with its own set of expectations, mainly that you work. Mistress, never one to miss an opportunity to guilt-trip a warm body into unpaid labour, decides it's time for you to pull your weight. She announces this at dawn, of course, when you're still drooling into a straw mattress and dreaming about central heating. Will's gone out to the fields, she says, tossing a lump of bread the size of a toddler's fist at your chest. You're going too. You sit up slowly. Fields? Yes, you've been breathing and eating long enough. Time to sweat. So now, against every instinct in your soft, screen-addicted modern body, you're heading out to help with the harvest. You, with your tissue paper hands and your phobia of bugs, are going to do a full day of medieval agricultural labour. It starts with a walk, a long, muddy, freezing walk, through fields that stretch endlessly into the horizon and smell aggressively like fertiliser and hopelessness. The sky is low and grey, the wind sharp enough to cut skin, and your ankle, remember that little souvenir from week 1, has chosen today to start acting up again. You find Will at the edge of a barley field, already swinging a sickle like he was born doing it. His hands are stained with dirt, and his tunic is soaked through. He grins at you. Hope you brought gloves. You did not. They hand you a sickle, blunt, probably older than the Reformation, and point at a row of barley. You start cutting. 10 seconds in, you realise you have no idea how to swing it properly. By minute 3, your hands are bleeding. You try switching grips. It doesn't help. Your back starts aching, then your shoulders, then your soul. The older man beside you snorts. City hands? Useless. You want to argue, but he's right. You're slower than everyone else, clumsier, and clearly broadcasting first-time peasant energy like a beacon. You cut maybe half a bundle in the time it takes Will to stack 6, and then the blisters start. You try not to scream when the first one bursts. Here's the fun historical fact for today. Tudor agricultural labour was relentless. Most peasants worked sunrise to sunset 6 days a week, with Sundays off, if they were lucky. The tools were basic, the work was backbreaking, and there were no pensions, no health plans, and definitely no sick leave. The only benefit you get from a hard day's work in the fields is that you get to eat. If the harvest is good, if it's bad, you starve, or get conscripted, or get blamed for witchcraft, or all three. You glance up and see Mistress on a nearby hill, watching the workers with a hawk-like squint. She's got a basket on her hip and a scowl on her face. Even from this distance, you know she's judging your work ethic. You bend lower, cut faster, and nick your thumb for the 3rd time. By midday, you can't feel your fingers, or your toes, or your will to live. The bread you ate this morning has long since evaporated into nothing, and your stomach is considering mutiny. Someone offers you a flask of something bitter and lukewarm. You drink without asking. It's beer. Possibly vinegar. Definitely has floaters. You drink it anyway. There's a short break where everyone collapses under a tree and eats cold onion pie and stale cheese. You sit next to a man whose face looks like a topographic map and who only speaks in grunts. He offers you a turnip. You thank him like he's given you gold. Quirky side fact. Tudor peasants often worked barefoot in the fields, especially in summer, because shoes were expensive and terrible. Even if you had a pair, you wouldn't want to ruin them. You look down at your mismatched, falling-apart boots and consider joining the tradition. Then you remember what lives in the mud out here. Nope. The second half of the day is worse. Your muscles are done. Your hands look like someone tried to peel an orange using only disappointment. You're sunburned and cold, which feels like an insult to physics, and that's when the storm hits. Not a polite drizzle, not a dramatic, romantic thunderstorm. A full, soaking, head-to-toe, mud-everywhere deluge. The fields turn to soup in seconds. You're slipping with every step, barley clinging to your legs like seaweed. Will slips, falls, laughs. You slip, fall, almost cry. Mistress waves her arms and shouts something about salvaging what we can, and everyone kicks into a weird frenzy of desperation, bundling wet crops, stacking too fast, sliding, swearing, trying to beat the weather. You do your best. You barely make a dent. By the time you stumble back into Southwark, you're soaked, filthy, bruised, and missing at least 2 layers of skin. You're also hungrier than you've ever been. Dinner is a thin stew with questionable lumps and a slice of bread so hard it might be older than you. You eat it like it's a gourmet feast. You even lick the bowl. That night you lie on your straw mat, staring at the ceiling, and feel every single joint pulsing in protest. You think about how farmers today use GPS, precision irrigation, drones. Then you think about swinging a sickle for 10 hours in the rain just to eat a turnip and a dream. Open scholarly debate. Some argue Tudor peasants lived decently when harvests were good. Ample time outdoors, stable diets, a tight community. Others say that's a romantic myth, and the reality was constant toil and early death. Based on today's adventure, you're leaning toward the latter, and you only did one day, just one. But the people here, they do it every day, rain or shine, bleeding or blistered. No wonder they burn witches for entertainment. They're too tired to do anything else. You wake up the next morning half convinced your body has entered open rebellion. Your hands are stiff, your shoulders feel like they've been used to batter down a castle door, and your legs, well, they're somewhere between dead weight and firewood. When you try to sit up, your back makes a noise like someone stepping on old wood. Will, ever the cheerful gremlin, strolls past and claps you on the shoulder, hard enough to jolt your soul. Still breathing, he grins. That's the best we can ask. You grunt in response, too sore to form actual words, but today you're not heading back to the barley fields or the bear pits or the surgeon's hut of horrors. Today you're doing something different, something, dare you say it, slightly exciting. Because Mistress, in an act of either pity or a calculated attempt to get you killed, has arranged for you to accompany a supply delivery to a minor noble's estate. She says it like it's a favour. You'll get to see how the other half live, maybe learn some manners. Then she shoves a basket of dried fish into your arms and points to a cart out front. Mind the geese. The journey is bumpy, slow, and smells overwhelmingly of salted cod and angry poultry. Will tags along, of course. He wouldn't miss the opportunity to mock you in new surroundings. The cart's driver is a man with 2 teeth and 0 patience, who spends the entire ride spitting out the window and muttering about bandits, even though you haven't seen so much as a squirrel. It takes nearly 2 hours, most of it uphill on a road that's less road and more well-trodden sequence of accidents. But eventually the trees clear, and you see it, the estate. It rises like a sun-dappled fever dream out of the countryside, all high stone walls, sharp gables, and manicured gardens. Compared to the sagging houses of Suffolk, it might as well be Versailles. You roll through the gate under the judgmental gaze of a dozen guards, each one armed and absolutely not here for your peasant vibes. The cart stops near the stables, and you're told, in no uncertain terms, to unload the fish and keep your mouth shut. You nod like a good little mud-covered background character and begin hauling baskets, trying not to breathe too deeply. The stables smell like hay, horses, and money. But once the job's done, something strange happens. You're not immediately sent away. Instead, you and Will are told to wait by the kitchen door, an actual stone doorway, with hinges that aren't rusted, and a door that opens without shrieking. This alone feels decadent. Then, the steward appears. He's dressed in black and looks like a man who has never laughed in his life. He eyes you both like you're either intruders or new wallpaper, then says, "The mistress wants help in the garden." Will perks up. "Weeding?" "No," the steward says. "Security." You exchange a glance. Security. You're you. You don't even have a weapon. What kind of noble needs you to keep anything safe? Turns out this security job is more like distraction. The lady of the house, a sharp-featured woman with a swan's neck and the expression of someone who owns 3 mirrors per room, has an herb garden she prizes above all things. Unfortunately, some of the local boys have been stealing from it. Not food, not even flowers, but herbs, medicinals, specifically mandrake. Which brings us to today's quirky fringe fact. Mandrake root, when pulled from the ground, was believed to scream, not metaphorically, literally. The myth said its cry could kill a man dead, so naturally people started pulling them up with dogs or covering their ears like they were disarming a bomb. Tudor Britain loved a good drama route. You're stationed near a low hedge maze with instructions to watch for movement. You have no idea what to do if you see anything. Probably scream, possibly faint. Will, of course, treats it like a game. He invents increasingly ridiculous scenarios involving mandrake poison spies and herb-thieving witches. You sit on a stone bench and pretend your spine isn't disintegrating. Then you actually see someone. A figure darts across the far end of the garden. Young, fast, clearly not a servant. Will stands up. "Hey!" he shouts. The figure freezes, then bolts for the hedge. You both give chase, or rather Will gives chase, and you hobble after him with all the grace of a haunted laundry basket. You catch up just in time to see the intruder, a girl, maybe 15, with wild hair and a bag of stolen herbs, vault a low wall and vanish into the woods. She's gone before you can even curse properly. Back at the estate, the steward scowls. Did she take anything? Will shows him the handful of leaves she dropped while fleeing. Mandrake again, the steward mutters. They think it makes you dream of the future. You blink. Does it? He stares at you. Only if you plan to die soon. Comforting. After the excitement dies down, the noblewoman herself actually speaks to you. She thanks you, for the attempt at least, and offers you a glimpse into the life you'll never, ever have. She gestures toward the garden and says, "Order is everything. A house, like a kingdom, must be structured." You smile and nod like that's not one of the most terrifying things you've ever heard. And here's your scholarly debate of the day. How clean and orderly were noble houses, really? Some records describe estates as pristine sanctuaries, full of fresh herbs, clean linens and decorum. Others suggest they were just as dirty and chaotic as anywhere else, only with more expensive wallpaper. The truth is probably somewhere in between, opulence layered over rot. You don't get close enough to find out. By sunset, you're dismissed with a half loaf of bread and a single silver penny. Actual money. You consider framing it. Will wants to buy dried pears. Mistress will probably take it. Still, it feels like something. Like you earned something. On the cart ride back, Will says, "You chased a thief today." "I almost chased a thief," you correct him. "You didn't throw up or faint or trip into a duck pond." That's progress. You lean your head back and watch the sky turn purple. You still smell like salted fish. Your hands are swollen from work, your muscles are toast. But for the first time in days, you don't feel entirely at the mercy of this place. You've survived bear baiting, barley fields, a barber surgeon with poultry-based methods, and now a brush with the elite. You're getting better at this. Not good, necessarily, but better. Which, in Tudor England, is practically a miracle. The moment you start feeling even remotely confident about surviving in Tudor England, the universe smacks you square in the face with a powdered glove and says, "Oh, sweet summer child." And that's how you find yourself accidentally drifting within spitting distance of the royal court. Literally. There's a man ahead of you in the crowd, spitting in the street, with the kind of arrogance that can only come from someone who's been paid not to die in a ditch. It starts with Mistress's older cousin, Lady Anne, or that silk-clad pain in the arse, as Mistress fondly refers to her, sending word that she needs help with some sewing, which sounds innocent enough. "She's got a place in Westminster," Mistress says, stuffing a wrapped bundle into your arms. "Take this. Don't talk. Don't touch anything. Don't blink if you can help it." You ask what's in the bundle. She glares. You shut up. The walk to Westminster is long and mostly silent. Will tags along, naturally, because what's the point of you getting into trouble if he's not there to witness it? The closer you get to the royal district, the more the atmosphere changes. The roads are cleaner, or, well, less crusted in sewage. The buildings are larger, newer, straighter. There are people in doublets that aren't patched with old sackcloth, and more than a few have full sets of teeth. You see shoes with actual soles, faces without soot, even a dog with a ribbon on its head. Rich folk, Will mutters with barely concealed contempt. Always smell like lavender and judgment. You turn a corner and suddenly it's there. Westminster Palace. Not quite the postcard-perfect Gothic fantasy it'll be later, but still massive. Stone towers loom over the river, their shadows long and stern. You realise just how far you are from the smoky, crumbling alleys of Suffolk. Lady Anne's house is tucked within a row of cleaner, better-guarded homes just outside the main palace grounds. A well-dressed servant answers the door and looks at you like you tracked in a wolf. But the bundle in your arms earns you passage, and soon you're inside a house that smells like wax, roses, and smugness. The job turns out to be help carry bolts of fabric from the lower store, which you do with all the grace of a concussed donkey. The second you open your mouth to ask where something goes, someone barks, "Silence!" and now you're pretty sure this entire house communicates telepathically. But then Lady Anne appears. She's tall, sharp-featured, and clearly so far above your pay grade that looking directly at her feels like a taxable offence. She doesn't acknowledge you except to say, "Take that fabric to the Queen's tailors. Tell them it's for the Michaelmas gowns." Will, who had been blending into the woodwork, visibly stiffens. "The Queen's tailors?" "Yes," she says with zero interest in how terrifying that sentence is. "Do hurry." So now you're being sent, you, a time-lost gremlin in borrowed hose, to deliver fabric for the Queen of England. Elizabeth I Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, that one. You don't know whether to laugh or faint. The tailor's workshop is located within the palace walls, which means you have to be cleared through a gate. A guard looks you up and down like you're wearing plague on your face. But the sight of the bundle, sealed with Lady Anne's sigil, gets you a curt nod. You're in. Inside, it's chaos. Controlled, elegant chaos. The tailor's room is filled with silks, gold-threaded bodices, laces fine as spiderwebs. You see a sketch pinned to a wall of a gown so massive it probably requires its own horse. There's a pile of pearls in the corner larger than anything you've seen in your life. And yes, someone is actually embroidering a rose with real rubies. You hand over the fabric, say nothing, and begin backing toward the door when, of course, someone calls out, "You there?" You freeze. A woman in a ruffled coif steps forward. "Can you run an errand to the printing office?" "Quickly now. Take this list. No mistakes." You nod. You have no idea where the printing office is. Will, now playing the world's most reluctant footman, guides you through the corridors, all of which feel cursed. Every wall is lined with tapestries that probably cost more than your modern apartment. The people here move differently, more like cats than humans. Every gesture is deliberate, every word filtered through layers of status. And then it happens. As you round a corner, you come face to face with a cluster of courtiers. They're laughing at something, hands raised delicately, voices like silk. But at the centre of them is her. You stop breathing. Elizabeth. Or at least you think it's her. The red hair, the porcelain skin, the ruff that could double as a parasail. She's radiant, terrifying. Her eyes scan the room like a hawk considering who it will devour next. You don't know what the protocol is for accidental time traveller bumps into Supreme Monarch, but you're pretty sure it's not stand there with your mouth open like a dying fish. Will yanks your sleeve, hard. You drop your eyes, step aside, and press yourself against the nearest wall like you are the wall. The Queen passes by. She doesn't even look at you, but someone else does. One of the courtiers, a man in dark green velvet with eyes like wet glass, makes a note of you. Just a flicker of interest, but it chills your spine. You don't want to be noticed here. Not by these people, not this close to power, because here's your historical fact of the day. The royal court in Tudor England wasn't just where laws were made and banquets held. It was a living chessboard, where alliances shifted hourly, and survival depended on being useful and invisible. One wrong word, one accidental association, and you could go from tailoring commissions to the Tower of London in less time than it takes to sneeze. There's ongoing scholarly debate about Elizabeth's day-to-day interactions. Some historians argue she was aloof, keeping only the most essential attendants in her orbit. Others suggest she had a surprising amount of awareness about even the smallest activities in her court. Either way, you're glad she didn't ask you anything. You deliver the list, get a parchment back in return, and practically limp sprint back to Lady Anne's house. You hand it off to a steward and wait, heart hammering. No one says, "You've disgraced us," or "Her Majesty wants to see you," which feels like a win. The cart ride home is silent for a while. Then Will says, "You know, if she'd noticed you, really noticed you, they might have asked questions." "About what?" "Where you're from, who you serve, who sent you." You swallow. "And what happens then?" Will shrugs. "Depends who's in a bad mood." The next morning you find out the tailor who spoke to you was arrested. Something about debts, or heresy, or gossip. The details are fuzzy, but you remember her face. You remember that she smiled at you. You remember that you were seen, and in Tudor Britain being seen near the crown is as dangerous as being cursed. You don't go outside for 2 days. You say it's because of the rain, and yes, the sky does seem intent on drowning London in slow grey sheets. But the real reason is that you're scared. Terrified, actually. You keep replaying that moment in your head, over and over, the Queen walking past, the flash of her face, the courtier's eyes catching yours like a hook. It was just a glance, a flicker, a shared moment in a palace full of people, and yet it lingers like a bruise you can't see. You spend most of the time curled in the corner of Mistress's house, trying to make yourself smaller, quieter, less visible. Will doesn't push. He plays dice with himself in the corner, using bits of broken pottery as stakes. At one point he looks up and says, "You've got that look again." "What look?" "The one where you're thinking too hard and breathing too fast. Like you're going to jump out the window and live in a tree." "Not the worst plan," you mutter, but you don't jump. You stay. You eat the watery stew and chew through bark-textured bread. and pretend that you're not constantly glancing at the door every time someone knocks. And then, just when you start to think you might have imagined the whole thing, when your brain tries to convince you the courtier didn't really see you, didn't really care, you get your answer. Because that evening, as the candles flicker low and the coals hiss in the hearth, there's a knock. Not the usual sort. Not the frantic pounding of a neighbour yelling about rats, or the drunken thud of a lost merchant. Number. This knock is firm, rhythmic, like it belongs to someone who expects doors to open the first time. Mistress opens it and immediately steps aside. Two men enter. They wear long dark coats, belts with daggers, and expressions that suggest they haven't smiled since birth. You don't need Will to whisper, "Watchman," to know who they are. "Which one is it?" the taller one asks. He looks around like he's inspecting livestock. Mistress gestures toward you. She doesn't speak. You can't blame her. The man turns. His eyes are so pale they almost look clouded, but his gaze is clear and heavy. You. Come. You stand. Slowly. Carefully. Your legs feel like wood. You're certain you're about to be arrested. Thrown in the tower. Tortured for knowledge you don't have. Or worse, asked to explain who you are. But the man doesn't produce chains. Instead, he pulls out a folded note. Wax sealed. Crisp edges. He holds it out. You stare at it. "Take it," he says, like you're wasting his lifespan. You do. You break the seal and unfold it. The handwriting is neat, practiced, looping. It reads, "The lady in green velvet has questions. You will come. Noon, 3 days hence. Be clean." That's it. No signature, no explanation. Just a summons. Will peers over your shoulder. That sounds fine. Definitely fine. Nothing bad has ever started with a note like that. The guards leave. The door closes. The silence afterward is louder than the rain. Mistress finally speaks. "What did you do?" You shake your head. "I don't know." But deep down, you do. You got too close. You wandered out of your designated role. You were seen where you shouldn't have been, by someone with the power to ask. That night, you barely sleep. You keep thinking about what Will said, who you serve. You don't serve anyone. You don't belong to a guild. You have no master, no trade, no letters, no parish. You're a ghost in a time that doesn't believe in ghosts. You're one well-placed question away from vanishing. You bathe in a barrel the next morning. The water is freezing. The soap is mostly lard. You scrub until your skin turns pink. Then you borrow your cleanest clothes, still wrinkled, still vaguely fish-scented, and pray that no one will notice. On the third day, you make your way to the location listed in the letter, an inn just off Cheapside. The King's Bell. You arrive early and wait in the corner like furniture. The room smells like spiced wine and desperation. You don't order anything. You don't dare. At noon, the lady arrives. You recognize her instantly. The courtier in green velvet. The one who caught your eye as the Queen passed by. She sits across from you with the fluid grace of someone who knows precisely what's owed to her. Her hair is braided like a crown. Her fingers are covered in rings that look more like weapons than decoration. "You," she says simply, "are not from here." You open your mouth. Nothing comes out. You try again. What do you mean?" She smiles without warmth. "Don't insult us both. Your posture is wrong. Your voice is strange. You blink too often, and no one saw you arrive. That makes you interesting." You stare at the table. "I'm just a servant." "No, you're not. But that's the only answer you're going to give me, isn't it?" You nod. She studies you for a long moment. Then she reaches into her sleeve and pulls out a small wrapped parcel. She slides it across the table. "Ginger," she says. "Rare. Worth more than your shoes. You don't move. That's a gift," she continues. "The next time I might ask something in return." You swallow hard. "What do you want?" She stands. "Nothing, for now." And just like that, she's gone. You sit in that inn for another hour, staring at the bundle of ginger like it's cursed. Will finds you there and walks you home. He doesn't ask what happened. He just says, "You've got the look of someone who's made a very strange friend." And you have. Open scholarly debate time. How much did people at court know about the world beyond their borders? Some argue they were insular, obsessed with their own petty squabbles. Others believe certain courtiers were deeply curious, hunters of secrets, gatherers of whispers. You've just met one of the second kind. You don't know what she'll ask next, or when, or how. But one thing is certain. You're not invisible anymore. There's a particular kind of fear that settles into your bones, not the loud, heart-pounding panic of bear baiting or being almost hanged for having white teeth, but a quieter, stickier kind. The kind that lingers behind your ribs and makes you check shadows twice. That's the fear you carry now, because someone at court knows you exist, and not in the "you smell like mud and say weird things" way. No, in the "I see through you, and I might use you" way, which in Tudor England is far worse. You try to go back to normal, if you can call anything about your life here normal. You chop firewood until your arms shake. You help mistress make a disgusting-looking porridge that somehow tastes worse than it smells. You even help Will patch the leaky roof by tying yourself to a chimney and praying you don't die from period-accurate building codes. But everything feels fragile now, like the floor under you is made of ice, thin, cracking ice. It gets worse when word starts spreading, whispers mostly. At first you think it's unrelated, just the usual London gossip. The butcher's apprentice eloped with a widow twice his age. A nobleman died in a duel over a spoon. Someone swears they saw a demon climbing the steeple of St. Paul's. Standard stuff. But then you hear your name, not your real name, of course. No one knows that. But the name Will started calling you when you first arrived. Ash. Short. Unassuming. Easier to fit in than your real one. And now it's being passed around like it means something. Ash. The one who walks like he's never worn boots. Ash, who helped the herb woman avoid arrest. Ash, who was seen near the palace. You want to believe it's just rumour, harmless. But this is Tudor England. Rumour is currency. It's proof. It's motive. It's a death sentence wrapped in a whisper. You ask Will if he's been talking. He swears he hasn't. But you catch him glancing at you when he thinks you're not looking. Like he's trying to decide whether he still knows you, whether you're safe to be near. And then one morning the trouble finds you properly. You're walking through the market square trying to trade a cracked pot for a bit of dried eel. Not glamorous, but it's what lunch looks like now. When a hand clamps down on your arm, you spin, ready to punch someone or cry or both. It's the constable, not one of the Queen's guards, not the courtier's lackeys, just your average garden variety town constable with a face like unbaked bread and eyes that say, "I haven't slept since Henry VII." He doesn't smile, he doesn't blink, he just says, "We've had complaints." About what, you ask? He tightens his grip. You. And that's how you find yourself being dragged through the streets like a common criminal, your eel long forgotten, your heart doing gymnastics inside your chest. A small crowd follows you, because of course they do. Nothing brings people together like public shame. You're thrown, not gently, into a holding room inside the town hall. It's dark, damp, and smells like every bodily fluid that's ever existed. There's straw on the floor, a bucket in the corner, and a small grated window too high to reach. You sit. You wait. You wonder which particular rumour finally did you in. Was it the Queen's tailor arrested days after speaking to you? The herb thief you failed to catch? The lady in green who gave you ginger and a warning disguised as a gift? Hours pass. Or maybe days. You can't tell. Eventually the door opens and a man steps in. He's dressed in clerical robes, black, severe, and entirely devoid of comfort. A local official, maybe, or something worse. He sits across from you, opens a book with a dramatic flourish and begins. Name. Ash. Full name. That is my full name. He raises one eyebrow. Place of origin. You hesitate. London. Which parish? You hesitate again. The man leans forward. I suggest you answer truthfully. Lies have weight here. You take a breath. I don't know. That does it. He closes the book, not gently. We have reports, he says, that you speak in strange patterns, that you carry yourself like a gentleman but have no household, that you were seen near Westminster with no livery, no master and no explanation. You say nothing, he continues. There are those who say you are a foreigner, or worse, a spy, possibly even a conjurer. Your head snaps up. A what? A conjurer, he repeats, voice dropping to a whisper. A summoner of spirits. A trafficker in knowledge best left buried. The devil's pet. You want to laugh, you almost do, but the look on his face kills it. Here's your historical fact. In Tudor England, magic was a category so broad it could include everything from astrology to herbal medicine to simply knowing too much Latin. And while witchcraft was typically pinned on women, conjuring was a more masculine-coded accusation. Men who were thought to deal in forbidden knowledge, books, alchemy, prediction, could be dragged into court just as quickly as any suspected witch. Sometimes more quickly, because knowledge wasn't just dangerous, it was threatening, especially to the people in charge. There's a silence now, the kind that only comes before something terrible. Then a voice behind the door, a woman's voice, calm, measured, familiar. Let him out. The door creaks open. The official stands, looks at whoever's outside, and grits his teeth. He says nothing. You rise slowly, heart thudding. Outside stands the lady in green velvet, still perfect, still terrifying. She nods. You're done here. You don't question it. You walk past the official, past the threshold, out into the night air that tastes like soot and salvation. You don't ask how she knew, or why she helped. She doesn't explain. She just says, your name's spreading. That can be useful, or very, very fatal. I suggest you pick a side. Then she walks away. You stand there in the street shaking, not from cold, but from proximity to power to suspicion to something much darker. Scholars still argue how much sway individual courtiers had in manipulating local justice. Some claim they interfered regularly, using pawns to test the waters. Others say most town watchmen operated independently, slow, brutal, and not especially curious. But clearly you've been adopted by someone who knows how to twist the system. And the question is no longer, will I survive Tudor England? It's what will I owe when I do? You don't go back to the market, not for days, not for fish, not for eels, not even for the honeyed cakes you pretended not to love when Will caught you licking your fingers. Instead, you keep to the shadows, slinking around alleys, ducking into doorways, avoiding eye contact like it's a sport. Because something has shifted, and you feel it in your bones. You're not just a stranger anymore, you're a known stranger. Which, in Tudor England, is just another way of saying target. Even Mistress, who never had time for your nonsense and generally seemed about as fond of you as she would be a persistent rash, keeps giving you side eyes. Every time she passes you in the cramped kitchen, her hands pause a moment too long. Not suspicious exactly, but watchful. Like she's waiting for you to suddenly start floating or set the cat on fire with your mind. Will, on the other hand, is having the time of his life. People are talking, he says, half whispering and half giggling, like it's all part of a thrilling stage play. Old Jacob said he heard you were a bastard prince from Spain. And Maud from the bakery swears you can speak with owls. You groan. Please tell me no one's bringing me dead birds as offerings. Will grins. Not yet. But I wouldn't leave your shoes out. You try to laugh, but it comes out tight. There's nothing funny about being the wrong kind of interesting here. You've already been questioned, arrested, and rescued by a woman who definitely plays political chess with live people. You don't need more attention, so you do what you've gotten strangely good at lately. You disappear. You spend more time in the graveyard near the edge of Southwark, where the stones lean like drunks and the air smells faintly of damp earth and unspoken stories. It's quiet there, peaceful in a way nothing else in this world is. And one afternoon, as you sit on a crumbling tomb reading over a charcoal-scribbled list of things to avoid, witches, rats, people who smile too politely, someone joins you. Not Will, not Mistress. Her, the lady in green velvet. Again. She just appears, like she stepped out of a crack in time, her boots cleaner than should be possible in this city of filth, her cloak trailing behind her like she owns the dirt. She doesn't sit. She leans, just enough to make sure you can't pretend not to notice her. I warned you to pick a side, she says. You sigh. And you assumed I chose hiding in a graveyard? She tilts her head. You're not as clever as I'd hoped. But you're not as dull as you look either, so we'll call it even. There's a pause. You try not to fidget. Then she tosses something onto the ground between you, a folded square of linen. You stare at it. Well, she says, are you going to open it, or are you planning to mourn the stone? You pick it up slowly. Inside, inked in careful script, is a list of names. Names you don't recognize, except one, John Dee. That stops your heart for a moment. Because here's your historical fact of the day. John Dee was one of Elizabeth I's most famous advisors, a mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, and yes, a magician. Not sleight-of-hand nonsense, but someone who believed he could speak with angels. Literally. Dee kept mirrors for scrying, summoned spirits, and wrote volumes on alchemy and esoteric knowledge. He was respected, feared, and deeply connected to the higher circles of power. Why are you showing me this, you ask. The lady shrugs. You're not the only one who doesn't belong here. Dee sees things. He's been looking for someone, a variable, a hole in the pattern. I think you're it. You blink. You think John Dee is looking for me? She doesn't answer. She doesn't need to, because in this time, people like Dee are the bridge between the seen and unseen, between what is and what might be. He wouldn't bat an eye at your modern accent or odd turns of phrase. He'd probably try to dissect you or recruit you. There's a scholarly debate here, of course there is, about whether Dee's so-called angelic conversations were sincere, or if he was just using mysticism as a power play. Some historians believe he truly believed what he was doing. Others say it was an elaborate ruse to stay close to the Queen's ear. Maybe both are true, but you're less interested in his intentions right now and more worried about what happens if you get caught up in them. You hand the linen back. She doesn't take it. Keep it, she says, and when someone comes asking for you, not if but when, you'll know what to say. And what's that? That depends. Do you want to be a ghost, she asks, or a flame? You have no good answer. She leaves you with the question and the linen and 1,000 pounds of pressure sitting squarely on your shoulders. You think about running, maybe getting out of London altogether, head into the countryside, change your name again, be someone boring, someone invisible. But that night, as you lie on your straw bed, staring at the flickering hearth and listening to the whistle of wind through the cracks in the door, you think about the list of names. You think about John Dee, you think about power, and something strange starts to twist in your chest. Not ambition, not exactly. Curiosity. What would happen if you did meet him? What would he see? Who would he say you are? Because right now, you're not anyone in particular. You're just trying to survive. But maybe, just maybe, there's something more than survival. Something after. And that thought? That's more dangerous than anything you've faced so far. You stare at the folded linen every night like it's going to unfold itself and whisper the right decision into your ear. Sometimes you tuck it under your makeshift pillow. Other times, you fold it 10 different ways, as if origami will summon answers from the ether. It never does. It just sits there, smug and silent, with John Dee's name scrawled neatly in ink that hasn't faded at all. Like even the parchment knows better than to mess with whatever this is. Will keeps asking why you're walking around like you swallowed a church bell. You don't answer. How can you tell him that you're one blink away from stepping off the edge of reality altogether? That someone in velvet and secrets has basically handed you a torch and pointed toward a labyrinth with no promise of return? But one morning, after the cold seeps so deep into your bones you think you might never feel warmth again, you make your choice. You go to find John Dee. Of course, this is easier said than done. You can't just walk up to a town crier and say, "Excuse me, good sir, I'm looking for the Queen's favourite wizard. May I have his address?" That's a good way to get yourself accused of being possessed. Or French. Fortunately, the lady in green left you more than just a list. She left you a location, subtle, scratched on the edge of the linen like a signature. Mortlake. A small riverside village just west of London. You only know it because Will once mentioned it had decent fishing and not too many people screaming in the streets. It takes you the better part of a day to walk there. Your boots are holding together out of spite. The wind is sharp and constant, like the weather itself is angry you've dared to make plans. By the time you reach Mortlake, your hands are numb, your ears are on strike, and your stomach is composing an opera about starvation. And then you see it. The house isn't grand, not noble, but it's wrong in a way that's hard to name. It stands apart from the others, both physically and spiritually. Its windows are dark even in daylight. Its roof slants like it's listening. And on the front door, scratched into the wood in a pattern that doesn't quite make sense, is a symbol. A circle divided, a star, and what might be an eye. You knock. Because of course you do. The man who opens the door looks nothing like what you expected. You imagined robes, a beard that touched his knees, maybe a raven perched on his shoulder for dramatic flair. But instead, John Dee is small, tired-looking, eyes too bright for his sunken face. He wears a plain black coat and holds a book open in one hand, even as he stares at you. "You're late," he says. You blink. "What?" "I thought you'd arrived days ago." But time is a slow speaker and a poor translator. You open your mouth to apologise. He's already walking away. "Come, I don't like to explain things twice." You step inside. Because of course you do. And now you're standing inside the heart of something vast and strange. Every wall of Dee's home is covered in books. Not just the Bible or the usual fare, but heavy tomes bound in leather, some chained shut, others whispering as you pass, though you're probably imagining that. Probably. There are jars, hundreds of them, filled with powders and bones and liquids that shimmer like spilled moonlight. Maps of the heavens, the earth, and places you don't recognize. A globe that spins on its own, a mirror that doesn't reflect you quite right, a candle that burns blue, a chessboard mid-game though no one's playing, and in the middle of all of it, John Dee scribbling something onto a parchment with a quill so long it looks like a bird wing in motion. You clear your throat. I don't know why I'm here. He doesn't look up. You will. So, you don't think I'm mad? Now he does look up. His eyes are too young for his face. Oh, you're mad, but not uniquely. He finally gestures for you to sit. There's a stool made of wood that might have once been the part of a ship, or possibly a sacrificial altar. Hard to tell. You sit anyway. He asks your name. You lie, of course. He smiles. Let's try that again. So you say, Ash. He nods. That's better. Then, without warning, he places something in front of you. A crystal. Smooth. Round. Black. It absorbs light instead of reflecting it. A scrying mirror. Touch it. You hesitate, obviously. You've read enough fantasy books to know this is how people end up possessed or turned into goats. But then again, you've been through bear baiting, execution watching, field work, Tudor medicine, and court politics. How much worse could one more weird object be? You touch it. Nothing happens. Then everything happens. Your mind splits. Not painfully, but like a door opening. You see things. Memories that aren't yours. Buildings too tall, made of glass. Lights that move without flame. Words you've never said but know too well. And just as quickly it's gone, you pull your hand back. You're sweating. Dee is watching. I knew it, he says softly. You've come far. I'm not from... You stop. You already know. I knew before you walked in. He paces slowly, hands behind his back. Time is not a line. It's a garden. Most never leave their path. You, however, you've fallen between the hedges. You want to ask how, why, what now, but none of the words form right. Quirky fringe fact. Dee believed angels spoke to him through a medium named Edward Kelly using a language called Enochian. He thought it was the original language of creation, the tongue of Adam. He kept records of these conversations in enormous meticulous books. Some scholars now think Kelly made the whole thing up to manipulate Dee. Others aren't so sure. Right now you're not sure of anything either. You've been marked, Dee says suddenly, by more than this world, and others will want to use you. Be wary, you nod. Because honestly, what else can you do? He smiles, gently, almost kindly. Take this. He hands you a small leather-wrapped packet. For protection, when the sky cracks. Cracks, you ask. But he's already opening another book, muttering to himself. The audience is over. You step back into the light like you've emerged from a tunnel that shouldn't exist. Mortlake is still there. The river still runs, but everything feels different now, tilted. You make your way back to Suffolk slowly, not because your body hurts, but because you're carrying something new inside you. A sense of scale, a weight of possibility. Historians argue whether Dee was a genius or a lunatic, a scholar ahead of his time or a man who lost himself in symbols. But you? You met him. You looked into his scrying glass. You saw things no one here would understand, and you're starting to realize you were never just a visitor. You might be part of the story. You don't speak much on the way back. Not to the innkeeper who warns you the Thames is flooding again, not to the street vendor selling pies with more bark than beef, not even to Will when he finds you sitting outside Mistress's house that evening, eyes unfocused, hands still clenched around the leather-wrapped bundle John Dee gave you. You don't open it. Not yet. You're afraid of what might be inside. Or worse, of what might happen when you see it. Will says something about a missing chicken and an argument over stolen apples. You nod, not really listening. He squints at you, then taps your arm with the back of his hand. You've got the look again. You don't respond, because inside your head something buzzes. Not a sound exactly, more like a frequency. A hum just at the edge of your awareness. Ever since touching Dee's scrying mirror, the world hasn't quite settled. You feel it in your teeth, in your bones, in the pause before each breath. Like time is holding itself back, waiting to lurch forward again. You finally sleep that night, but it's not restful. You dream of a spinning circle, of fire and glass and water that flows up, of people speaking words you can almost understand but not quite. Latin, Greek, or something older. There's a woman in the dream with no face and a man with one eye who keeps whispering, "You have to choose." You wake up at dawn, soaked in sweat. You unwrap the bundle. Inside is a charm, and it's simple. Just a bit of braided twine holding a small etched disc of metal. You recognize the symbols now, at least vaguely. Alchemical signs, Mercury, Saturn, air. One of the sigils matches what Dee had carved into the doorway of his house. A circle divided. You run your fingers across it. Nothing happens, but it feels heavy, important. You tuck it under your shirt next to your skin, and that's when the knock comes. Not the usual everyday knock. Not the thud of the milk boy or the knock of a neighbour with gossip and too much time. Number. This knock is fast, sharp, official. Mistress opens the door, then closes it again, then opens it a second time as if the visitor might have been a hallucination the first round. She calls your name without looking at you. It's for you. You stand. Your knees aren't cooperating, but you manage to shuffle to the door. A man stands there, dressed in livery you've never seen before, black with a crimson sash, a crest that looks unfamiliar and vaguely ominous. A falcon with one wing outstretched. He doesn't smile. He hands you a rolled parchment. You are summoned. 2 words that drop like lead. You unroll the paper. It's sealed in wax again, this time with a different insignia. The script is sharp, precise, and very much not a request. You are to attend the private gathering of the Lady in Green, 2 nights hence. Location, the old observatory. Bring nothing, tell no one, be prompt. You look up, the man is gone. Will appears beside you because of course he does. Another note, he asks. You hide it behind your back. No, he stares at you. You're a worse liar than a priest with lipstick on his collar. You don't respond. That night you sit by the hearth, holding the charm under your shirt, heart thumping to a rhythm that doesn't feel like your own, and you think, why me? You're not powerful, not particularly smart. You have no noble blood. You didn't fall into this world with some secret weapon or grand destiny. You just arrived. You're surviving, barely. But now you've touched Dee's mirror. You've been seen by the court. You've been questioned by city officials and saved by people who move in shadows. You've seen things, strange things, shift around you, like the world knows you shouldn't be here, and instead of rejecting you, it's folding around you. 2 nights later, you walk to the old observatory. You didn't even know it had one. It's on the edge of town, long since abandoned by the crown, overgrown, half collapsed. But it still stands, its domed roof cracked, the great viewing platform weathered by time and soot. You push open the heavy door. Inside are 8 people, not nobles, not peasants, something else. Men and women in robes, some plain, others gilded. One man is blindfolded, another wears gloves made of thin gold wire. A woman with ink-stained hands sits cross-legged on the floor humming to herself. And at the centre, of course, is her, the Lady in Green. She smiles at you, finally genuinely. You came. I wasn't aware I had a choice. Oh, you always have a choice, she says, gesturing for you to come forward. It's just that most of them are traps. She tells you the gathering is private, a circle of seekers, thinkers, readers of stars and bones, not witches, not magicians, at least not the kind that burn. But people who believe the world is not as it seems, people who understand that knowledge isn't blasphemy, that time bends, that power moves through patterns. Some of us serve the Queen, she says, some serve no one. But all of us want to know. And then she says the most dangerous thing anyone has said to you since the day you arrived. You belong here. You open your mouth. No words come out. Not just in this time, she adds, reading you too well. In this place. With us. Among the questions. One of the others, an old man with hands like paper, nods. You're a ripple. We need ripples. The still pond teaches nothing. You don't know how to respond. You're not sure what they want from you, only that they're not afraid of what you are, or where you came from, or what you might do next. Open scholarly debate. Were secret societies like this real in Tudor England? There are hints, coded letters, private gatherings, alchemical treatises hidden in church libraries. Some say there were indeed circles of thinkers operating outside official doctrine. Others argue it's romantic myth-making, retroactively applying mysticism to a period obsessed with control. Either way, you're standing in one, right now, breathing its air, hearing its pulse, and you realise, maybe for the first time, that you're not here by accident. The lady in green steps forward, placing a hand over your chest, not your heart. The charm. She whispers, "You're part of something now, and it's only just begun." You return to Southwark at dawn, clothes damp with fog, mind unmoored from any sense of what's supposed to happen next. Sleep is no longer even on the menu. You're beyond sleep. You've entered a strange new state of being, a quiet, vibrating alertness, like the moment before a lightning strike, stretched across an entire morning. Your body walks through the streets. Your brain is somewhere else entirely. The lady in green's words keep looping through you. You belong here. They sounded like a blessing at the time. Now, you're not so sure. Mistress says nothing when you slip back in. She just watches from across the room as you pretend to stir the embers, pretend you've been gone for 5 minutes and not all night. She knows, of course. You don't lie very well, and even if you did, you're still glowing like someone who's just stepped out of a divine encounter, or a very expensive bonfire. Later that morning, Will corners you behind the house. "You've been different lately," he says, squinting like he's trying to figure out if you're still made of flesh or something more volatile. "Different how?" You listen more, talk less, blink slower. You used to flinch when someone sneezed near you. Now you stare at people like you're waiting for them to start levitating. You don't deny it. He leans in. "Are you cursed?" You shake your head. "Possessed?" "No." "Touched by a star?" That one makes you pause, not because it's accurate, but because it's close in a way that defies logic. You shrug and walk away, but he's not wrong. You are different, and the changes are more than skin deep. You feel them when you look at maps now and see routes no cartographer ever drew. When you hear Latin whispered in church and your ears prick, not from confusion but from recognition. When people pass you in the street and stare just a moment too long, like they sense it too, you start dreaming differently. Gone are the nightmares about plague and public hangings. Now it's symbols, constellations, equations that rewrite themselves. Once you dream of Dee's mirror again, only this time it shows you, standing in the middle of a battlefield of broken clocks, holding a lantern with no flame. Another night you wake up with a phrase in your mouth, fiat lux, let there be light. It feels like more than scripture, it feels like permission. But here's the problem with knowledge. The more you know, the more dangerous you become, not just to others, but to yourself. And the city is watching. You're not the only strange thing in London. Rumours are like rats. They scurry faster than footsteps, and the whispers have spread beyond the lady in green circle, beyond Southwark, beyond Mortlake. People are asking about you, quietly, carefully. The sort of asking that doesn't come with questions, but with bribes. Coins slipped into palms. Where does he sleep? What does he read? Has he ever spoken of where he comes from? And worse, the old stories are surfacing. Not about you, exactly, but about people like you. Here's your historical fact of the night. In 1590, just a few years after your current moment in Tudor time, a man named Edward Squire was executed for allegedly trying to poison the Queen's saddle. Was he guilty? Historians disagree, but what matters is this. When paranoia creeps in, all it takes is a whisper to light the fire. And you're basically made of whisper fuel. You decide to go back to the observatory alone, just to think, just to feel like yourself again, whatever that even means anymore. But when you get there, the door's already open. Inside, the room's been ransacked. Not by thieves. Thieves wouldn't bother tearing open scrolls or smashing ink pots. This was destruction with purpose, with anger. Books lie in piles, torn and soaked, charts burned. The great orrery, a delicate model of the cosmos once suspended by wire, is now a twisted nest of brass and silence. There's no one inside, not the lady, not the old man, no one. Only a note pinned to the doorframe with a thin, black-bladed dagger. The note is written in a different hand, harsh, slanted, and impatient. They are watching you now. They know what you are not. Run if you want, hide if you must. But the tide is already turning. You were never invisible, you are the spark. There's no signature, but you know this isn't from Dee, and it sure as hell isn't from the lady in green. We'll find you hours later sitting in the ruins of the observatory, You don't even realise he's there until he says softly, "You're glowing." You laugh, because you're definitely not glowing, unless fear counts. "I mean it," he says. "You look like you've gone somewhere and didn't come all the way back." You look at the note again, read it for the 100th time. You think about the others, those seekers, those believers. Did they run? Were they taken? Were they burned, quietly, without trial or song? Will sits beside you, arms over his knees. "What do they think you are?" "I don't know," you say. But you do. They think you're something impossible in a world that hates impossibility. You remember a passage Dee showed you once from an ancient text. The quote was in Latin, but the translation stuck. "The light that shines too bright becomes a fire." You're starting to understand what that means. There's a scholarly debate about these sorts of burnings. Hidden ones, not recorded. Quiet purges of thinkers, seers, heretics who ask too many questions. Some say they're exaggerated. Others insist the records were simply destroyed. Some of these people vanished from history not because they died, but because someone wanted them to be forgotten. And now that might include you. But the worst part, you're starting to accept it. Because with the fear comes something else. A clarity, a momentum. You were swept into this world by accident, or so you thought. But you stayed. You changed. You touched something few people ever do, the edge of knowing. And once you've seen it, you can't go back. So you fold the note, tuck it inside your coat. You walk back through London, passing torchlight and suspicious stares and the press of mud and fate. You no longer walk like a servant or a foreigner or a lost child. You walk like someone who knows something, like someone who chooses. You don't yet know what side you're on, but you know you're no longer just trying to survive. You're part of the fire now. It starts with bells. A distant tolling that seems to thread through the morning fog, one slow note after another, dragging behind it the kind of silence that wraps around your ribs and doesn't let go. Church bells aren't new, of course. You've heard them every day since you arrived, whether marking a death, a wedding, or some local holy day. But this sound is different. Slower, heavier, like a warning cloaked as ceremony. Will hears it too. You both freeze where you are, halfway through gathering firewood in the back alley. He doesn't speak. He just looks at you with a face that says, "I have a very bad feeling and I'm trying not to say it out loud." The sound keeps coming, and with it, something else. A ripple in the neighbourhood. Movement. People whispering, gathering, craning their necks toward the square like something's about to happen, and they don't want to miss it, especially if it's awful. You follow them, of course, because you have no self-preservation left. You round the corner into the market square and see the platform before you see who is on it. A scaffold, not a gallows. Not a hanging today, but punishment nonetheless. A woman is being led up the steps in chains, flanked by guards. She's thin, her hair braided tightly under a linen cap, her dress a rich green now dark with grime. Your heart plummets. It's her, the lady in green, the one who told you to choose, who gave you the list, who whispered truths like knives wrapped in velvet. And now she stands, bound, in front of a growing crowd, as the town crier clears his throat and unrolls a parchment with theatrical slowness. By order of the Queen's Privy Council, he announces, this woman, Elizabeth Henslow, is found guilty of consorting with known enemies of the Crown, disseminating forbidden knowledge, and trafficking in subversive arts. She shall be punished accordingly and held for further questioning. The crowd murmurs. You can feel the air shift. Some of them spit. Others cross themselves. One boy shouts, "Witch!" but his voice cracks halfway through and doesn't quite carry. You can't move. You feel nailed to the spot, because this isn't just someone you knew. This is the person who saw you when no one else did, who gave you something when you had nothing. And now she's being paraded like a criminal, because of secrets she shared with you, because of you. You edge closer, moving with the tide of the crowd. She doesn't look at anyone, doesn't flinch, doesn't shout, but as they turn her to face the square, her eyes do land on you. Just for a second. They don't widen, they don't plead. She just nods, barely, as if to say, there you are, still watching, still part of this. Then the punishment begins. They don't kill her, not yet. Instead, they strip her of her title, publicly, a mockery of nobility, her brooch torn off, her fine outer cloak removed, her hands branded, not with iron, but ink, black symbols painted on her palms, visible for all to see, the mark of the seditious. Her fate isn't sealed, but it's certainly been scrawled in pencil, waiting to be pressed in ink by someone higher up the ladder. And then she's led away, back through the crowd, through side streets toward the cells beneath the courthouse, her future now hanging by the same thread you've been walking for weeks. You turn to Will, who looks like he's seen a ghost. What? What was that? You don't answer, because the better question is what happens now. You're next. Not officially, not publicly, not yet. But this is the Tudor way. Find the circle, remove the leader, watch the rest collapse. Only this time they missed something and they forgot about the others. You run, back to the place that used to be the observatory, back to where the secret circle once met. You're not alone. A few others have found their way there too. 2 from the old gathering, and 1 stranger with a scar down his cheek who says, "They're moving faster than we thought." 1 woman says her house was searched. Another says her cousin vanished in the night. You're not the only name on a list anymore, and you realise it's happening. Not a crackdown, a purge. Here's your historical fact. The late 1500s saw a sharp increase in surveillance. Francis Walsingham, Elizabeth's spymaster, developed an entire network of informants and codebreakers to keep an eye on dissenters, Catholics, intellectuals, anyone who didn't fall neatly in line. It wasn't all torture and trials. Sometimes it was just silence, disappearances, a slow erasure of inconvenient people. There's a long-standing debate among historians about how many of these disappearances were political, how many religious, and how many just convenient scapegoats. And in the end, it doesn't matter to you, because you're caught in the middle either way. You finally speak. "We have to get her out." Everyone turns to you. "She helped us," you say. "All of us. We can't just let this happen." They exchange nervous glances. Someone mutters, "Do you even know what she's accused of?" You snap, "Yes," being a threat just like us. And there it is. That word again. Threat. You never asked to be dangerous. Never wanted to matter enough to get people punished just for knowing you. But here you are, in a collapsing ruin with a bunch of maybe traitors, planning a rescue that could get everyone killed. Will appears at your side, quiet as always. "So," he says, "we're doing something stupid again?" "Looks like." He nods. "At least this time we'll have company." And that's the beginning of something you don't quite have a name for yet. A plan, maybe, or a promise. You're going to try and break someone out of Tudor prison. You, with no sword, no title, no clout, just your wits, some stolen ink, and the name of a man who speaks to angels. That night you light a candle. Not for warmth, not for prayer, but because you want to be seen. If they're watching anyway, they might as well see you for what you are now, a spark. And sparks, well, they tend to start fires. You don't sleep that night. How could you? The city feels different now, sharper, closer, like it's holding its breath. You sit near the hearth, knees drawn to your chest, watching the last sliver of candlelight bend and tremble. Somewhere in Suffolk the bells have stopped. The crowd has scattered. But the tension, that stays. It clings to the air like soot. You think of her hands, ink black, outstretched. The way she looked at you, not with fear or blame or even hope, just understanding, as if she'd known all along that this was how it would end, or begin. You're not sure where your courage is coming from anymore. Maybe it's the charm still warm against your skin. Maybe it's the mirror, or the dreams, or the fact that you've survived everything this world has thrown at you so far. You were dropped into Tudor England like a rock into a pond, and the ripples are still moving. You know this much now. You're not just a visitor here. You're a fracture, a question mark, a problem no one expected. And in a time when knowing too much gets you chained to a wall or worse, being the unknown is the most dangerous thing of all, but also the most powerful. So you rise, you stretch your sore limbs, and you step back into the night, ready to finish what you didn't start, but might just be meant to complete. Whatever comes next, it won't be safe, it won't be simple, but it will be yours, and that might just be enough.